Welcome to an online meeting of the Royal Borough of Kensington Chelsea's Licensing Subcommittee. Thank you all for attending. I am Councillor Dory Schmetterling for Pembridge Ward, and I'll be chairing this meeting. It is being held via Microsoft Teams and is also being streamed. In case anybody's wondering about the law, licensing is not subject to the same rules, which is why we are allowed to continue online in remote meetings. The committee for this hearing comprises Councillor Ian Waston and me. I have no interest to declare in this matter, and perhaps Councillor Waston can now introduce himself and state whether he has any interests.
Hello, Councillor Waston here. I'm a councillor in Camden Ward, and I have no declarations of interest.
Thank you very much. You may all keep your cameras on, but please have your microphones off unless you're speaking. If things get difficult, we may request you to turn your cameras off as well, but turn them off if you wish to. We are joined by Paul Phelan and Laura McGahn from the Council's licensing team. Well, just formality, please confirm you're here, Mr. Phelan.
Present, Chair. Good afternoon.
Hi, Ms. McGahn.
Present, Chair. Good afternoon.
Yes, our legal officer today is Lindsay Le Mazurier. I think we heard her just now, but just for the formality, say hello.
Present, Chair.
Thanks. Also with us is our committee officer, Ms. Anne Wright. She will be monitoring all of our connections and help with any technical issues you may have. And she has already, of course. So thank you very much so far, Ms. Wright. She's supported by Ismay Sherry, Hannah Koskela, Gareth Ebenezer, and Tom McGolgan. Before we get to the heart of the matter, just a few ground rules. Well, as mentioned already, please keep your microphones on mute unless you're invited to speak. And, oh yes, please make sure your mobile phones are on silent. And do keep your cameras on, as mentioned, if you wish, unless we run into connection problems. Please note that the Microsoft Teams chat function is not monitored, so please don't use it. In addition, this is a public meeting and the chat would not be seen in the live stream. Everyone should have received the procedure for this meeting regarding the use of cameras and how to connect back if you lose connection. Thank you. The case before us today is to grant a license for Gettier UK Limited, on this occasion operating out of the rear of 2 to 4 Kenway Road, just off Earls Court Road, London, SW5 0RR. On this occasion, well, the quorum of this committee is 2, and as we only are 2, it is not possible to elect a substitute chair in the event that I may lose connection temporarily during the broadcast.
Chair, it's Anne Wright from Governance. We cannot hear you at present.
I'll send the Dory.
Committee would not.
Dory, can you hear us?
This committee will then adjourn for the minute or two. Hope for either me or indeed. Can you hear me now? During my disconnection period,
no, we can't, Dory.
Me or Councillor Waston. If one of us is not able to reconnect at all,
apologies, but I'm hearing every other word.
Adjourn to another day. I hope this won't happen. It certainly not happened to me. Briefly disconnected. I have it. You can't hear me?
Everyone, I'm just going to give Dory a call because we
Yes.
can't put up with this reception. Leave it to me.
Dory,
Can you? Right. What
Councillor
I'm going
Schmetterling, it's
to do
Anne Wright
is
from Governance.
Let me just try.
I'm just calling Dory now to see if I can get
Okay,
him.
thank you,
Hang on.
Councillor
Let me
Waston. I think
putting Wi-Fi. How is this now? Can you hear me? No. Terrible. Ian, hi. I can hear everything. Of course, my phone's on silent, but on call me.
Hi, all. I've just spoken to Dory. He's just going to reconnect on his computer. Apologies for this.
Thank you, Councillor Wason. We will wait the few minutes. Thank you.
Testing. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, Chairman,
Yes,
that
that's
is much
Can
clearer.
you see me?
Yes,
Right.
please start again.
Well, okay. Well, this is very ironic, of course. In the middle of talking about what happens when we get disconnected, I get disconnected.
Yeah. Carry
Yes,
on, Dory.
Chairman, I was
Never
wondering
more.
if, sorry, it's Anne Wright from Governance. I was wondering if you'd like to leave your camera off for a little bit. I think that might be also being slightly problematic while we do these introductions.
Yes, okay. That's fine. It's just that I'm now on a different device, which I'm logged in on two devices. Anyway, okay, I'll turn my camera off with me. As I was saying, if one of us, that's Councillor Wason or I, get disconnected sort of completely, we will have to adjourn the meeting. However, this has not happened to me yet, but as you can see, sometimes you get brief disconnections. For clarity, I will outline the procedure of this meeting, which the papers for which have been circulated, and the papers are online also. First, the licensing officer, Mr. Paul Phelan, will give a brief outline of the application. Well, we know he's here. Then I will ask the applicant's legal advisor, Ms. Anna Cosgrave, to present her submission. She will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes to do so. She is joined by her clients, Ola Zur, the regional manager, and Turkey Kurklu, site manager, as well as their representative, Chris Nixon, who may be able to assist members should they have any questions. Yes, could you please all confirm your attendance? First, Anna Cosgrave.
Chair, if I might jump in, it will be myself as the applicant's representative presenting our submissions. Anna Cosgrave, Turkey and Ola are here from Get Here in my assistance. So it'll be myself who will be presenting, Chair. But yes, we are all in attendance.
And you are Chris, right? And you are Chris Nixon.
That is correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This will be followed by questions by members of the committee of the applicant, followed by questions of the applicant by the responsible authority. And we have here the police and our noise and nuisance department. Next, the responsible authority in the form of PC Ian Davis will present the objection, and Mr. Davis will have up to 10 minutes to do so. Mr. Davis, could you please confirm your presence?
Yes, Chair, I'm here. I would also like to put forward Keith Mahaffey, RBK's Noise and Nuisance, as a witness to assist. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, in that case, can we have confirmation by Mr. Mahaffey that he's still with us?
Yes, sir, I'm here.
Thank you. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee of the responsible authority, followed by questions to be asked by the applicant of the responsible authority. And questions may be asked by the objectors of the responsible authority. Next, the objectors, Councillor Linda Wade, Richard Parker, Councillor Malcolm Spalding, Andrea Level, and Philippa Seabom are expected to speak. Could you please confirm your presence in the order that I mentioned? So, Councillor Wade.
Excuse me, Councillor, this is not a complete list. It doesn't mention myself, and I should be on that list. Russell Levinson here. Going with Ebenezer will confirm. I am there, okay.
Oh, yes, I see. Fair enough.
Yes,
so, obviously, you're there.
Yes, I am.
All right, Richard Parker.
Present.
Councillor Spalding,
Present, Chairman.
Ms. Level,
Present.
and Ms. Seaborn.
Present.
Thank you. You will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes each to make your presentations. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee to the objectors, and then questions may be asked by the responsible authority to the objectors, and then questions may be asked by the applicant to the objectors. After this, we will ask our legal officer, Ms. Le Mazurier, to deal with any questions she may have, and for example, regarding any conditions. Finally, we will turn to the governance team to see if any issues have been raised that we need to consider. There will be no summing up and the meeting will end. Just to complete that side, the summary decision will be issued within 5 working days. And the full decision, which is essentially the summary decision with reasoning and minutes of the meeting effectively, will be issued at some point after that. I'd like to remind everyone that the committee has read the papers, which comprise the main pack and all of the additional submissions circulated by the parties. So there is no need to repeat their content, but please do draw our attention to certain points and pages, and Ms. Wright will move the document on the screen for us. Okay, let's start this part of the proceedings. Mr. Phelan, could you please outline the case for us?
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, all. Today's application has been submitted by Gettier Limited for the grant of a premises licence at the rear of 2-4 Kenway Road, SW50RR. Today's application for the grant of a premises licence seeks the sale by retail of alcohol off the premises 24 hours a day. The applicant has stated as part of their application that the hours the premises are open to the public are operational hours, as there will be no public access to the premises. This application has attracted a representation from PC Davis of the Metropolitan Police on the grounds of the prevention of both crime and disorder and public nuisance. A summary of PC Davis's representation can be found on pages 3 to 6, with full copy attached at Appendix C, pages 22 to 26 of today's papers. A further 10 representations have been received which oppose this application. This includes a representation from a local ward councillor and 2 from local residents associations, namely the Elscourt Society Planning and Licensing Group and Elscourt Village Residents Association. A summary of these representations can be found on pages 6 to 8, with copies attached at Appendix D on pages 26 to 37. Council records indicated that at the time this report was written, the premises received no complaints over the preceding 24-month period. However, I can confirm that the council did receive a complaint on the 16th of May 2021. The issues raised within this complaint focus around the delivery of goods to the premises and the dangerous driving of drivers on neighbouring roads. Again, council records also indicated that at the time this report was written, no temporary event notices had been submitted within the preceding 24 months. However, since the report was produced, I can also confirm that 2 late temporary event notices were submitted in respect of this premises and objected to by both the police and the council's environmental health noise team, which subsequently resulted in a counter notice being served in respect of each temporary event notice. That concludes the summary of this application. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Chairman, you're on mute if you're speaking.
Thanks. It's terrible. Let's try the camera on as well. The applicant may now make the presentation. Mr. Nixon, did you say you'll do it?
Yes, Chair. Just prior to our submission, I do have a quick point of interest, if you will, just following the licensing officer's report. Chair, I noticed as of the notification yesterday that the police have called a witness from the environmental health team. Chair, I appreciate that this, and Keith is a responsible authority in the matter. So I'm not entirely sure, though I'm sure we'll hear from him directly as to why the police have called him as a witness. But to confirm, Chair, the applicant does not consent to any new information being presented. So I just wanted to make that point outright here, Chair, that I'm not expecting a backdoor representation to come in the form of a witness from the police. Chair, the other thing I'd like to ask, considering it is RBKC policy that we don't have summing up and we finish with the list of conditions proposed by your legal advisor, Chair, could the applicant please go last? There may be some questions raised that I won't have any chance to address, and I think in the interest of justice, it's fair here to rearrange the order that we go. So could I request that the applicant actually present submission finally rather than first?
Well, could I suggest that rather than reordering the whole thing, if there are any questions that arise at the end, I mean, this is going to be subject to the legal advice we're going to get, but rather than rearranging everything, keep to the order. But if there are any questions that arise or any points you or the applicant wants to make at the end, I'm sure that can be accommodated. Does that sound reasonable?
If you're happy with that, Chair, then I am. I'm assuming the legal advisor has no note. Lindsay has a hand up. Apologies, Chair.
Okay.
Chairman, could I just ask as well, if you are granting the applicant a chance to discuss any potential conditions at the end of the meeting, could you also allow the objectors to suggest their potential conditions as well at the same time?
Mr. Mouzurier.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to confirm what Mr. Nixon said initially, that Keith Mahaffey can only amplify the police representation. He cannot add new evidence, as he did not make a representation. The same goes for Councillor Spalding when he speaks on behalf of Lydia Tan, and I'm not sure if he's speaking on behalf of the Earls Court Society at their request. He can only amplify their evidence. And it's in your discretion as to the order that people speak, but I suggest it's correct that people can have a full discussion at the conditions session at the end.
I think that sounds good. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mouzurier. I think you should stick to the order because people will have prepared questions and so on, or think of questions. So let's do that, and there will be the opportunity to talk about it. Sure, if one party gets a chance, so should the other party. Sounds reasonable. Sounds fair to me. So would the applicant get going? You've got 10 minutes from now. It's 14:50.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for confirming questions at the end. It is appreciated. Councillors, I'd like to begin with a short intro to Gettier as a company, our model, values, etc. I appreciate you've probably done your own research, but I'd like to kick off with that so you have a broader understanding of what we are all about. Thank you to your licensing officer. There's nothing there for me to cover, and the confirmation of reading our case summary, therefore I won't go through that either. So if we start with an introduction, Gettier is a convenience goods delivery service. I'm sure you've taken a quick gander on Google, but essentially we deliver products that you would find in any given supermarket. The primary aim here is that we would deliver from one of our centres direct to a person's home. The list of products is incredibly extensive. If you've taken a look at the app, I'm sure you've seen it, but ranges from everything from vegetables to nappies, other baby products, small electronics, and we hope, following this application, alcohol. But anything you could feasibly buy from any supermarket, you could also buy from Gettier, and that is our customer base. Now, in terms of how it all works, Gettier has its own bespoke app where we sell our products from. This is owned, designed and controlled by Gettier. In order to make an order, you have to download, sign up to the app, including registration of a valid address and also customer details, including date of birth. The general operation of Gettier is that we operate a number of small delivery hubs. We don't have massive warehouses. We are not a huge distribution centre. We operate small operational premises dotted throughout London, whereby small teams would operate the premises and delivery drivers come from and to the premises. Now, councillors, a lot has been made of our delivery drivers. I'm not going to cover what I'm sure the representations will cover in their submission. But the delivery service obviously is a key element to the business and a key point of contention. The delivery of convenience products, as you all know and has been clarified by your licensing officer, is a non-licensable activity. We appreciate that this has come to the forefront of our discussion because of this application and because of how licensing works. However, it is a key understanding to get out there immediately for your consideration that we have not applied for a delivery business. The application before you and the decision you will be asked to make is on the licensable activity, the sale of alcohol by retail. I'll come more to that in a second, but if I continue with the model. The staff in question comprises of two separate entities, if you will. There are those that carry out our deliveries, and there are those within the unit that facilitate this, what we call operations associates, or if you will, warehouse staff. The actual transaction timeline goes from order received via the app, which is then translated to the relevant center or hub. This is then picked by one of our operations associates, packaged together, whereby then a delivery driver is called from our internal waiting area on premises to collect that order. It is at this point that the operations associate will make the driver aware, if alcohol is ordered, that there are age-restricted goods and they must carry out Challenge 25. This is apparent to the drivers, obviously, as they then package it ready for delivery in one of our Get Here branded bags. So they physically put their hands on the product to see that it is alcohol. In terms of how we manage our staff, we take great pride in the fact we do our very best to invest in our staff members. These almost always comprise of fully employed Get Here staff that go through a full training regimen, and this is regardless of their actual role. They all go through the same thing. In brief, this covers everything from Challenge 25, proxy sales, how to refuse a sale, how to check ID, and also road safety training. Councillors, I'm going to address the submitted evidence and additional information that you have here directly. Quite simply, we do our very best with our drivers. We are not Deliveroo. We are not Uber Eats. We do not sign up to or agree with a contractor system. We do, within all available capacity, employ our drivers. Waiting areas are facilitated and very comfortably, we would think, provisioned, where they can wait within our centre. They're not loitering on roads. They're not wandering around the street, and they are not standing outside restaurants in the freezing cold awaiting a delivery. That said, there are always teething problems with a new premises, and there is a lot we have to learn from and a lot we have to do. We appreciate that there is contention, that residents are not particularly happy with how we've conducted ourselves thus far, and therefore we have to make further efforts and take further steps. In short here, councillors, we have replaced the entire delivery team of the centre. The retraining of all staff has also been carried out. Where serious concerns have been raised, we have taken disciplinary measures internally, and those that have been identified as failing to uphold the values of Get Here are quite simply no longer with the centre, which I'm sure you can understand and appreciate the euphemism there. Get Here operate, as I mentioned, throughout London, and everywhere we go, we usually get the same kind of representations, and we understand why. We are a delivery service, and we appreciate and understand that this raises concerns from residents and other parties. This is due in large part, we would say, due to other companies and how they have operated and where they have failed to uphold discipline. However, we are not of that caliber, even though we appreciate that there are issues, there are contention within the local area, and that there is a much more that we need to do. We are not of that caliber that you may understand and have had problem with previously. We do operate in business and residential areas, built up areas throughout London. We know how to operate responsibly, and we know what we need to do. Where we do have issues, we will address those issues. And where there are problems, we will address those problems. And if that takes time, then it takes time. But the important fact is that we will do that and we will get there. Councillors, the law requires us that our end customer is our primary consideration when it comes to the sale of alcohol by retail. This is where the connection between us and the customer begins and where it should end. The law provides that we have applied for a license for the off sales of alcohol, and therefore this is the primary concern and primary decision that is on the table and what you need to consider in your decision. We appreciate that we have had representations from the police and others. However, we believe we have put before you a substantial list of licensing conditions that are appropriate and proportionate to the business and to the licensable activity we have applied for. To clarify, the licensable activity is the sale of alcohol. The delivery of such, even though we appreciate it is something that you would want to discuss, primarily is incidental to the act of the activity. That the Licensing Act 2003 says that we have to regulate the sale of alcohol. And therefore, councillors, the question before you is, does the way we sell alcohol undermine the licensing objectives? Does the way we sell alcohol create crime and disorder? Does the way we...
Sorry, your time is up. Could you please conclude?
I'll conclude quickly there, Chair. I am at the end. In terms of the decision before you, that is what we have to consider. The sale of alcohol, not the delivery, not deliveries to the premises, not what vehicles are used. These are within your power to condition, we appreciate. But what must be to the forefront of your decision is the licensable activity, where there is no evidence. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. I'll cover more of the questions at the end, but thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Nixon. And now we come to our panel questions. Councillor Wason.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Nixon. Got a couple of questions. One, and I doubt you will have this information to hand, so a good guesstimate will probably suffice. But what percentage of your sales between midnight and 7 a.m. include alcohol?
Thank you, Councillor. I could probably do you one better. The actual total sales of alcohol from data collected from other sites is 2% of total offering.
But that's through a 24-hour period, is it?
It is, Councillor. To clarify a bit more there, actually our busiest period throughout the day is between 5 and 9 p.m. The overnight sales are much, much less, to almost to a 10th degree. The actual, if I give a bit of clarification without giving away commercial data, the actual biggest seller at night is milk, followed by phone chargers. Alcohol constitutes a fraction of what we actually sell. It's not a lot. It's important to our business. It's an important fraction, but actually it's very little. To give you an idea there, Councillor, at the busiest sites, we usually only have between 1 and 2 drivers actually on shift into the later hours. Primarily, it's between 5 and 9 p.m. So yeah, it's into single figure percentages, Councillor.
Okay, so to confirm, you're telling me that between the hours of midnight and 7 a.m., it's in single figure percentages of sales involve alcohol?
Correct, Councillor. An important single figure percentage, but it is very, very low.
Okay, so yeah, okay, we'll bear that in mind. Secondly, you know, I hear you that you are a good and decent employer compared to some of your peers that you mentioned. I won't. But what percentage of your employees, in terms of deliveries, what percentage are your employees? And what percentages are third-party couriers?
At this moment in time, Chair, it's 100% employees. Now, we wouldn't want to restrict that in terms of conditions. At the end of the day, you know, we do have to look for staff at recruitment firms, etc. So it is something that we have to address. I'll clarify more in a second. At this moment in time, it's 100%. All of our staff members are fully employees of Getir. To clarify there, where we cannot directly employ drivers, we are finding these with recruitment companies, where we would basically have an approved pool of drivers that we would have signed up. We cannot directly employ them for obvious reasons. They wouldn't work with us very long if we just pinched their drivers. However, they all go through the same training. If we do have to go from outside our own direct employees, they all go through the same regimen. And as I said in the opening submission, the training is quite extensive, usually carried out over a period of 2 weeks, and covers everything from alcohol sales to delivery practice.
Sure, but you understand the line of my questioning in terms of you have more control over the behaviour of your employees than of people who are not your employees but performing the service.
Actually, Council, I would say we have exactly the same control, whereby, as I've mentioned, you know, we would have to. It's not by choice that we're doing this; it's by operational necessity. If we can't get employees of a decent caliber quick enough, then we have to do this. They would abide by everything that Getir employees would. They use the same vehicles, they wear the same uniforms, they wait in the same areas as our drivers. We wouldn't bring other employees whereby, you know, if they were wearing other uniforms, again, not to name anybody else, but they would abide by the exact same standard, Chair. Councillor.
Okay. And then with you mentioning vehicles, are any of your vehicles electric in terms of your delivery vehicles?
Primarily, they're all non-motorised. These are electric e-scooters and also bicycles.
Okay, primarily, can you give me a percentage on that?
Again, Councillor, at this moment in time, it's actually 100%.
So 1% are non-motorised vehicles doing deliveries?
At this moment in time, Chair, again, you
Okay.
probably want to refer to the case summary here. It is something that we are having to address. We're struggling to buy them quick enough.
Sure.
So it is something that we are struggling with, but by preference and by current practice, they're all electric vehicles. We recognise this as an issue, and that is why we use them.
Yes,
Again,
this is important to residents, as you can understand.
And I do understand, Councillor, and yes, you know, this is why we use them. It's because of this issue. We recognise that. We've learned from the mistakes of other companies. This is why we use them. It may be the case in the future, don't get me wrong, that we may have to use motorised vehicles, but this is not our go-to. Primarily, we use the very, very quiet vehicles.
Well, as you can understand, it makes such a huge difference to the lives of residents and the sleeping ability of residents, particularly between midnight and 7 a.m. That would you be happy to have that in as a condition, that it was electric vehicles only?
Councillor, it's a good question. Essentially, we don't think at all times of the day this would be strictly necessary, appreciating the needs and concerns of the residents. If it was 2 in the afternoon, would it be completely just to use or restrict to only electronic vehicles? I would answer probably not. If minded to grant the licence, councillors, then it's your decision to apply the condition. It is our wish, but I wouldn't want a carte blanche restriction across all hours of the day.
Okay. That's it. Questions from my side, Chair. Thank you, Mr.
Thanks very much, Councillor Wason. I just want to follow that last point. I think the suggestion was electric vehicles, particularly between midnight and 7 a.m. I don't think Councillor Wason mentioned all day. Perhaps he did. Did I miss something? But anyway, the point is at night or late evenings and late evenings and night. You're saying that if we are minded to grant conditions on those lines would be acceptable. We can discuss that later on when we get to conditions. What I would like to ask is, you said that you're not a delivery business, but a food business or goods. This is true, but delivery is integral to your business. Without the delivery angle, there's no business. Correct?
Apologies, Sarah. I'll clarify. I was stating that we have not applied to be a delivery business. Of course, we're a delivery business. Yeah, it's the part and parcel of what we do, as you all know. We only operate deliveries. We don't do collections, and no customers are allowed on premises. I was simply stating there, Chair, that the decision before you isn't whether or not we can deliver things. It's whether alcohol should be sold from the premises.
Yeah, I understand that. I do understand. It's quite clear. The purpose of this is just to add a range of certain types of goods to your current offering. It's clear. In this connection, I would like to ask, you said that you deliver you've got thousands of items in stock. And if these warehouses locally are not so big, how do you manage to supply everything? I mean, how do you make sure everything that somebody orders is in stock, or is it a regional thing? In other words, I suppose my thinking is, if you take your example, baby nappies, and tins of coffee, will one single supply source do it, manage it?
Yes, Chair, again, to clarify that, it's thousands of different product ranges across all sites. If a product was ordered from a particular site A, where the nearest centre didn't have it in stock, either A, the sale would not be able to go through or be refused, or secondly, it'd come from another centre. You're quite right. We cannot stock everything we have on offer at every site. It doesn't work like that for physical limitations. So you're quite right there. Not every warehouse carries everything at all times.
Okay. I'd like to now come to the actual delivery, both supplies and ordered items. On supplies first, we've got pictures of your vans blocking the road. Kenway Road is very small, as you know. It's not as wide as the road is in other locations where you have got premises. So what will you do about it? What can you do about it? I mean, for example, you could have the van going to the courtyard, or what's the point? Why not?
Yes, Councillor, we appreciate and we recognise the photos that were submitted to you. As I understand it, when it comes to deliveries to a premises and unloading, we are talking primarily about the Road Safety Act here, etc., and other legislation. The actual incident in question, I think it's interesting to note, Chair, that driver seems to have had very little choice in that instance. The tables and chairs from the restaurant next door was impeding onto the road. So it does seem like a bit of an odd situation that led to it. Yes, we do have suppliers that we can dictate to. And yes, we are addressing this, or already have, and are continuing to address this as we speak, that obviously they need to be acting better. These things are sometimes beyond our control. They are suppliers. It's not nobody's fault. It's just how it is. Kenway Road is very similar, one of the old London roads, as you quite rightly say. But yes, we are taking steps and we are in discussions to stop these types of things happening.
Okay, because yes, you're not their boss, but you are their client, and clients have got a certain amount of leverage to get something done, and it is important. And it is as it is. Isn't a get out. There has to be a responsibility. But I'm glad to see that you are working on it.
We are.
You can't. On the question of the deliveries. Oh, by the way, you couldn't enforce electric vehicles for your suppliers, could you?
No, Chair, I'm not entirely sure. Some delivery vehicle or some electric vehicles go to that size. I mean, they're not massive things; they are small vans. But I'm not entirely sure that such a thing actually existed in wide circulation.
Well, that's
no,
that
Chair,
is
but
the point, yes.
I would contend that it would be slightly inappropriate within the bounds of a license to control deliveries to the premises. But as I've said, it's quite right to be pointed out. Yes, we are in discussions. Yes, solutions will be found.
And as a matter of interest, I can't remember if it says in the documentation your proposed hours of delivery, that supplies delivery to your premises, or is it 24-hour supplies? I mean, many people operate around the clock now. So, or would you restrict, like for example, how many deliveries of supplies would you have between midnight and 7 a.m. to take that time slot again?
The quick answer is, Chair, is very little, because we're not selling all that much during the evening. In terms of deliveries to the premise being restricted, again, I would say it is not wholly appropriate within the bounds of a license to control non-licensable products. Licensable products, I may be minded to agree with, Chair, but non-licensable products, I'm not sure that's within the bounds of what we really should be dictating within a license. But be assured, it will be very little. The centre on Kenway Road is one of the smallest centres that we actually have.
Thank you, Mr. Nixon. I'm very well aware that certain things we cannot control under the Licensing Act, but it's also a matter of being a good neighbour to the residents around. And as you know, it says so in the statement of licensing policy for the borough that almost every street, if not all streets, are residential. So this has to be borne in mind. Even the so-called, the business hubs like Kensington High Street are effectively residential streets. So it's a question of being a good neighbour. Yes, you could do whatever you liked in some of these things, but this is what I'm looking at: a good and responsible neighbour to the people that I'm looking at. Okay,
we agree, Chair. We agree.
Right. So it's really up to you and your operational plan to control that, not for us under licensing to do that. Then we come to this question: your delivery drivers. First of all, there's a picture there of what looks like regular motorbikes in colours, Getty colours, parked in the courtyard. And then you mentioned e-scooters. You're talking about these actual scooters there'll be persons on them with a Getty box on their backs. Now, e-scooters are not yet legal, as you probably know. There we go. Are those all e-scooters? They look like motorbikes. I'm not sure.
No, they are electronic vehicles. Maybe I'm using the incorrect term, Chair. The only motorised vehicle I see is the one to the forefront. That is an employee's personal vehicle. That's not one of our delivery vehicles.
Okay, but I'm not sure I'd call that an e-scooter. Do you sit on those things?
Yes, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm not sure if I'm not an expert in vehicles, so I'm not sure if I'm using the correct term. But these are non-motorised vehicles. Yes, you're quite right. And yes, they're not these things you stand on. You do sit on them.
Okay, well, there must be, well, Ms. Lemouzurier wants to speak, but I just want to say that it can't be actually non-motorized if it's got an electric motor in it. I don't think they're using their legs to propel the vehicle. So, Ms. Lemouzurier.
Thank you, Councillor Schmetting. I was just going to clarify that the e-scooters are the ones where you're standing up on rather than sitting on. The rest are e-mopeds, e-bikes. It's just the e-scooters which are only legal subject to the trials. The rest of them are illegal. But e-mopeds, e-bikes, fine.
Yeah, maybe e-bikes and e-mopeds is a more accurate description here, Chair. I can ask Anna Cosgrave, our head of legal, to clarify there, if you could.
Oh, hi.
Yeah, she's got her hand up. Go on then.
Yeah, I just want to be totally clear. I think there's obviously the vocabulary that is used throughout the UK can be quite confusing, and totally acknowledge that. We're not, our staff don't stand up on anything. But the only two types of vehicle that we are covering and discussing, and the only two types of vehicle that we use are what we call e-scooters, and they're actually, for in common parlance, that would be an e-motorbike, electronic motorbike. And the other type is a push bike, e-bicycle or e-bike. So it does get a bit confusing, but both are electronic and non-motorized. They run off a battery. They don't run off petrol. In that photo there, you've got somebody else's personal, I don't know who that is, but it's nothing to do with, it's not owned, that is not an asset owned by Getir. It's not a bicycle bike.
Yeah, Mr. Nixon has, thank you. Mr. Nixon has explained that. I would just, for your own benefit, clarify that an electric motor is an electric motor. It is a motor, even if it runs off a battery. It doesn't matter where the power comes from. It doesn't really matter, but it's an electric bike. And the second thing is the word e-scooter it's very important because it's legal to use unless they're part of a rental scheme. And in London, the first trials are on. So in your own interest, for your own in your own interest, I wouldn't use that word. I would use the words that Ms. Le Mesurier recommended. And I was confused by that because otherwise you imagine, there's kids' scooters, which are then battery powered and can go quite fast, and they go on roads and they go on pavements and they upset a lot of people. So that's
maybe
not
I'm
what you
showing
mean,
my
obviously.
northern roots there, Chair, because we do call them scooters up here, where we mean mopeds. But point taken, and I appreciate the insight.
Yeah, because otherwise some of the residents might misunderstand what you're doing. Okay, so having sorted that out, I would like to talk about them until we even have evidence of pictures taken very recently of the drivers doing the wrong thing. Now it's very tempting to go out of your courtyard and turn left into Kenway Road and then onto Earls Court Road, but how are you going to control that?
Certainly, Chair, there are lessons, very important lessons to be learned here. And yes, we have taken proactive steps prior to actual further information coming through to us, being served by the licensing officer from residents. We were made aware that staff members and drivers were getting confused. Kenway Road, the one-way system, it is a very interesting part of the borough, and obviously they do need to get and familiarise themselves with that, and exactly, the signage isn't 100% clear in some cases, in my opinion. But either way, yes, important lessons have to be made, and we have taken steps. These include our own signage at site, instructing them which way to go. I appreciate, as it's been mentioned before, the very short distance between the Earls Court Road and our centre, and yet, it's literally a few yards. But we have taken the message on board. We are aware, and we have taken proactive steps. As mentioned before, we've replaced the entire staff of Kenway Road, retrained all of the above, and put signage up to instruct them as to the correct way to go out of there. So, absolutely, sure. Lessons have to be learnt, and certainly steps have to be implemented, and standards have to increase. We recognise that, and we hope we have addressed it.
Thank you very much. Because this evidence is recent. How recently did you replace your team, your delivery team for that site?
I think the new guys came in as of Friday, wasn't it, Turkey? But training's been going on pretty much all weekend. We appreciate further stuff has come in. Again, Councillor, this stuff is bound by road traffic laws. We need to be learning these lessons, and the drivers need to be familiarising themselves. We recognise that, and we are taking steps.
Okay, one last question from me is: how long have these premises been operating at this address?
Turkey, you're probably best placed to answer that, my friend.
Yes.
When did we actually go live at Kenway Road?
It's been 2 weeks.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Ms. Cosgrove had her hand up, but it's still up. Ms. Cosgrave, would you like to comment?
I put it down. Sorry, that was a mistake.
It's a legacy hand, as somebody called it. Not an old hand, a legacy hand.
Yeah.
I think that completes my questions. If Councillor Waston has thought of anything else, and then if not, we can move on to. Thank you. Then we can move on to questions from the responsible authority. Mr. Davis?
No questions from me, Councillor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And now, any questions from objectors?
If I may, Chairman, these are based on the objector that I'm speaking for and the Earls Court Society.
But okay, you're representing Lydia Tan, is that right?
And the Earls Court Society.
Right.
We submitted an objection as well.
Right. So just to be clear, you can amplify their objections.
So I'm speaking on behalf of Lydia Tan as a resident, but I'm also speaking as chairman of the Earls Court Society, who submitted objections on behalf of all the 16 local residents associations, especially the ones who are directly concerned by this operation. I have six very direct questions, Chairman. 6 very direct questions, if I may.
Sure.
Thank you, Chairman. The first question is, you've said you're using 100% employed staff using your own asset motorbikes, which are electric motorbikes. But when you use third party, self-employed with self-provided motorbikes, how on earth can you have the same measure of control that you have in a contract of employment? Because otherwise they become employees.
Thank you, Councillor. Our use of third parties, though we don't currently do this as yet, is actually going to be via contractors from recruitment companies. So yes, that they will be beholden. They are not self-employed at all because it's not a contractor system. They are contracted through a third-party recruitment company. Therefore, we can dictate whatever control we like.
But certainly less than if they were employed, because otherwise you're up against employment law. Question 2. Do you ever employ untrained and unqualified riders? And if you do you think that their safety and public safety are important?
Thank you. No, all our drivers go through the same training regimen, regardless of origin. None of our drivers are allowed on the road until they've completed the training regimen. And where alcohol is concerned, they also have to go through additional training for that aspect, and they're not allowed to deliver alcohol until they've completed that aspect. So no, we do not have untrained drivers. All the drivers employed have the correct licenses to drive on UK roads. And again, our training amplifies that. In terms of safety,
that's not actually my question. Do you employ unqualified riders, i.e. those with L plates?
Councillor, I'd have to question the term of unqualified. To drive one of these vehicles, you require a learner license and also pass the CBD test. In terms of qualification to drive these vehicles, that's 100% correct.
So it's your contention that a learner driver is as qualified as somebody who's passed their test. Okay.
I would say it's my contention, Councillor. That's UK law. It's not for me to dictate.
Okay, but they don't have a driving license. They've got a learner's license. They don't have a full license.
Some do, Councillor. Don't get me wrong. Some do, absolutely. But to drive one of these vehicles, you require a learner license and to pass the CBD test. That's UK law.
Leads on to my next question. If you do employ people who only have a learner's license, does your contract, do your terms and conditions require your couriers, your own employed staff, to actually pass a full driving test within a certain period?
No, Councillor, this would not be appropriate. To drive these vehicles, you have to comply with UK law.
Good answer. Okay. Yeah. You don't require them to pass a full driving test. Got it?
I'm not sure how we could insist on that, Councillor, personally. So no. But some do have full licenses. Don't get me wrong.
Well, it's very easy. You just say you only employ people who've got a full license. Next question. Do you, as part of your further training for your couriers, I mean, is part of that tested? Do you actually test their knowledge and understanding of the highway code, for instance?
Yes, they are tested. In terms of the road safety training, they are taken through classroom theory training, including a test at the end, and they then go through another shadow mock test of their original CBD test. We have a dedicated training team that goes round the centres basically as we employ people and bring them up, and they go into their probation and 2-week training period. They go out on the road to do mock deliveries where they are shadowed by another of our training staff, and they are monitored. If they don't pass that test, then they are not signed up and they have to retrain. So yes, that they are tested throughout the process at different stages. If they don't pass, they may not get to use the electronic motorbikes or mopeds, or be restricted to bicycles, or simply they won't be employed. So yes, that they are tested.
Okay. Next question. There's only 2 more. The next question is specifically for Turkey. Turkey, at Kenway Road, are you aware of any of your couriers driving dangerously or illegally?
Councillor, if I might jump in there to ask if Turkey is available, knows of them driving dangerously. I mean, I think we've been quite clear in the fact we have recognised that drivers have made mistakes and exercised poor judgment. I don't think that's a particularly fair question to ask.
It's still a question, though. Turkey, are you aware of any of your drivers driving dangerously or illegally in Kenway Road or in Earls Court Village?
Turkey, if you want to confirm that you are not aware of any illegal activity being taken place, that's fine.
Yes, as Chris said, we train all our colleagues, and we give them enough training to do their job. So basically,
yeah. But are you personally, as the manager of these couriers, are you aware of any of them driving dangerously or illegally?
Again, Turkey, you can confirm that you are not aware of any illegal activity on the site. I think that's more than enough to answer this question.
Yes, Council, I'm not aware, yeah.
You're not aware? Okay. You've seen all the pictures, but you're not aware. Okay. And then finally, do you actually have a management plan, which is sometimes offered as a condition, a management plan that covers your driver's training, the things that you've said, and public safety? Would you be prepared to accept that as part of your conditions, that you should have such a plan to the satisfaction of our council's licensing officers, who would then be reassured that your supply of alcohol what was being done as part of a plan, very much in the way that you've explained?
I can answer that again, Councillor. Yeah, the quick answer is yes. Yes, we do have our own internal policies and management plans. However, I recognise, and we did propose this within our case summary, that we are willing and happy to accept a condition for an external management plan, which would cover driving, trainers, etc., 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 all of the above, as you've just said. So yes, we are happy. I expect and appreciate we'll probably get to that when we get to the list of conditions proposed by the legal officer.
I'm really grateful to you, Chris and Turkey, for answering my questions. I'm sorry if I've been blunt, but time is short. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Spalding. I would like to, before we move on, I would just have a query on that. The business of the license, the driving license. I've seen plenty of couriers who on L plates who seem to lack a knowledge of the highway code, which is what Councillor Spalding was referring to, and a lack of courteous driving, a lack of knowledge of understanding of courteous driving. And obviously, if you have to take the driving test for a motorbike, of course, it doesn't have to be for a car, a motorbike, then it might help instill an understanding of the highway code. And also, what did you mean by CBD? I didn't get the CBD test. I didn't understand that, Mr. Nixon. Thank you.
No, that's fine. Turkey, you can probably answer this one. So I'll be honest, I don't drive mopeds. The CBT, apologies, Chair, I've just been corrected. This is the relevant test in order to drive the low CC motorbikes and mopeds. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chris, yeah.
Yeah. So, Chair, it's our understanding that a learner license plus this additional test is sufficient to drive one of these vehicles.
Does that mean the L plate will be taken off? That's the point.
No, Chair, I don't believe it changes that. The CBT training is additional to allow them to drive these low CC, these very small engine vehicles. So the learner drive, I think the learner plates have to stay on, Chair, to my knowledge.
I don't know. I once took a motorcycle test, and I can drive any motorbike I like, although I never do. I just would like to understand this. I mean, things have changed since my day. Got more complicated. Mr. Cook can comment on that. So I think that's the line of questioning that Councillor Spalding was after.
Sorry, Chair, was there a question there? I didn't hear it.
Question was, oh yes, is that the L plates stay on although they've taken this additional test? Is that a definite statement?
Yes, Chair. To our knowledge, that is a UK requirement under the law. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we can move on to the next stage now, which is
some questions, please.
Yeah, any more questions from the objectors, please?
Yes, please.
Oh, Councillor Wade. Yes, sure. Yes. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
It's all right. It's all right. It goes the same colour as my jumper.
No, the problem I have is that I'm
there
now on
you
only
go,
one
there
gadget.
You go. I have a number of questions.
Go ahead.
I'd like to talk to you about your management. You mentioned that you have 2 managers on site. It's a 24-hour operation. How many shifts do you have? And therefore, how many managers do you have per day?
Thank you, Councillor. A bit of clarification there. We are not currently 24 hours. We currently operate between 0800 and midnight.
I know, but Chris, you're actually applying. I come to the point that you're applying for a license.
I am leading up to it. We're not currently 24 hours, but yes, we do intend to be 24 hours. Therefore, current management staffing is 2. Where they are either both on or one is on staff at any given time.
Stop there. So you have, what is the length of time of the shift?
So I believe it's 8 hours. Turkey, can you confirm here, mate, in case I'm wrong?
That's right. We operate open 8 a.m. and then 12 p.m. So we have a 2 shift, morning and evening.
You have 2 shifts.
Yeah.
All right. So. Turkey, are there 2 people per shift?
One person per shift.
All right. Now,
management staff, Councillor.
Yeah,
I think
management staff.
Right.
Yes, thank you, Turkey. Thank you.
All right. So, just for clarification, so presumably you have the back office, which is the fulfillment section, and you have the front office, which is the dispatch riders coming in and collecting. So I would like to know which of the officers, which of the management staff is responsible for the courtyard and the dispersal.
This would be the site manager in question on staff at the time.
All right, but actually, which one? Is it the person, if you have 2, but apparently you've only got 1 at the moment. Part of the issue here is you've got 2 lots of staff, as far as I understand. You have people in the warehouse part, and you have the courier staff. Therefore, if you have 1 manager supervising the warehouse staff, then you have the people, you give the items to the couriers to go. Who is directly responsible and actually going to patrol the courtyard and the dispersal, i.e. going out from the courtyard into Kenway Road?
Councillor, again, to clarify, yes, this would be the site manager on shift at the time. Their responsibility is not split between two sections. I appreciate I explained it like that in my submission for ease of understanding, but they are still the one team, and therefore they are still managed by the team leader, the site manager. Just to clarify a bit more there, Councillor, Turkey will attest to this. They're not sat in some office somewhere hidden at the back of the premises. They are out on the courtyard and within the warehouse. This is their shift pattern. They're not hidden away somewhere where they're not controlling anything. The site manager is responsible for everything and all staff on premise.
So what training do your managers receive?
Thank you, Councillor. These guys are usually, we usually promote them from in-house, so they're usually experienced in both aspects, again, to explain it like that, of the business, and then they are promoted on merit. The additional training is management training primarily, and of course, they go through all the usual checks, etc.
And
so I suppose
Gettier has been going for how long?
Across the world, 5 years.
In England?
In UK since November last year.
All right. Is there a day book that actually puts down any comments, incidents, things that people might think might make improvements, or comments?
I believe you're referring to our incident log, Councillor.
Yes.
If that's the case, then yes, there is.
But is there actually 24-hour supervision of the courtyard?
Whereby
is there CCTV coverage? The reason why I ask this is because the courtyard's a very contained space. You've got residential property immediately above it, around it. And therefore, because it's contained, any conversation within the courtyard does get transmitted. So how long do your couriers normally stay with you?
Councillor, you're jumping slightly. There's a couple of questions there that I'd like to answer for you if I could.
All right.
In terms of the CCTV, yes, it covers the courtyard. I've seen it myself. So you can clearly see the full extent of the courtyard. In terms of the drivers and noise, like you say, amplifying for lack of a better term, yes, you're quite right. We have recognised this, and therefore they do not congregate in groups, certainly not at night in the courtyard. They wait in the internal waiting area. That's the purpose of why we built it. In terms of how long our drivers stay with us, I mean, that varies wildly. We would like to think that we treat our drivers exceptionally well. As mentioned before, they're employed, they're contracted, they're paid a decent wage, and we look after them in terms of our own facilities and incentives. I'm not sure if I could comment on how long those contracts last, though, Councillor.
Okay, do you know how long they stay?
Councillor, again, I don't think that's appropriate for us to say. That's internal employment things that I don't think is appropriate for public hearing.
All right, because the two things I have a thing about, I think that it would be useful to have CCTV coverage of the exit in order to be just as, so you'd be able to know whether they're going left or right. And I'm still very unclear as to how you can teach them about the procedures of Challenge 25, but actually, how is this monitored and how is this enforced?
Thank you, Councillor. That's really easy for me to answer. The training itself is actually carried out by ourselves at night training. The Challenge 25 is, again, a tested course where they have to learn all about it, learn about the Licensing Act 2003, learn how to recognise ID and fake ID, and how to refuse a sale when it comes to alcohol. They do have to pass a test. If they don't pass the test, they are not allowed to deliver it. In terms of how we manage it, all refusals are monitored and reviewed centrally by the management teams. And we do carry out our own test purchasing, though obviously we can't use actual under 18-year-olds, only the police can do that. But yes, we do complete our own test purchasing to make sure that they are adhering to it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Wade. Now, are there any other objectors? I think Miss Level's got her hand up.
Hi
Please.
there. Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes. Hello.
Thank you. I did have one question, following up on some of the points that were covered when Councillor Spalding was asking about the drivers and their training. And my question is, I think there have been videos that were circulated with the pack for today's meeting showing some of the dangerous driving that has been going on. And I wondered if the drivers had done the driving training, had they completed it, the drivers who were caught doing the dangerous driving.
Thank you, Andrea. The quick answer is yes, they all have to. Clearly, they have exercised poor judgment in using the training and the considerable investment that we put in them. So yes, they all have to still go through this training. Where found to be lax, without talking about anybody personally, they face disciplinary action, whereby we retrain where appropriate, or quite simply, they do not work at the centre. Again, euphemism intended there. So yes, they all have to go through the training, and there are consequences if they don't follow it.
I was just wondering, because if the drivers that we saw in those videos had completed successfully the training course, I wondered if the training course needs to be redesigned so that the drivers really understand the importance of this, and if conditions around this were a part of any management plan, is there a way to make sure that the training program is more rigorous and that's put into the management plan?
Councillors, we are happy for driver behaviour and training stipulation to be added to the external management plan.
All right, thank you. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, and that's noted. Now, I think we have another objector, Mr. Levinson.
Yes, I just heard something slightly extraordinary, that you felt that your drivers didn't understand the Road Traffic Act properly and didn't understand how they should drive, despite your training, and you therefore had to get rid of the whole lot. I mean, doesn't that suggest that? I mean, these are really basic things that drivers and the management should be aware of, how to drive on the roads. Yeah, this is not something that's particularly advanced. This is how to drive. Doesn't that suggest there's a kind of fundamental problem in the way that you recruit and train staff, and does it also suggest that you have a somewhat gung-ho attitude in setting up the business, which you're trying to address, but may well carry on, and maybe more commercial imperative than a safety imperative?
I can answer that. I wouldn't quite agree with a gun-ho nature. The training that is provided does cover these subjects in some detail. We appreciate that in some cases, though incredibly rare, and we've not come across it before, an individual can make poor judgment. The old cliche of leading a horse to water comes to mind, but the training is comprehensive. It covers all these aspects. If an employee is found not to abide by these, then essentially that's their decision, and they have to reap the consequences of it.
But you said that you had to get rid of all the employees at that place. You made a complete change, and the sorts of things you said they didn't understand were very basic things about the road traffic law, which way you should drive on the road. And
I don't think, Richard, that it's a case that they didn't understand. It's quite simply a question of they didn't follow the Road Traffic Act. They are basic things. I'm not going to disagree with you there. They should have followed it. They knew how to follow it, but they didn't.
But your managers, sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
The managers, you know, it doesn't. When a courier leaves your premises, the manager can see instantly which way he's going. Yeah, it's not something that should have ever happened for any person more than once. So I come back to: is there not some gung ho attitude within the company? Let's set it up, let's get it going, and okay, if we're not going to focus on safety or the peace and quiet of the residents at all. We're going to focus on getting this place set up quickly, and then okay, let's afterwards let's try and sort things out later.
No, I wouldn't agree. I mean, a 2-week training program doesn't sound particularly gun-ho or fast-track to me at all. If we give comparison here, other companies that use delivery drivers do not actually engage in any road safety training. So we would think certainly when looking at other companies, we are actually quite extensive. In terms of getting rid, I can clarify there quickly about the replacement of the staff. When we originally set up 2 weeks ago, we only actually had 2 delivery staff. So it wasn't that much of an extreme measure to replace them. But again, I disagree. I don't think a 2-week training regimen constitutes a gun-ho attitude. It's simply a case we have to do the best by our drivers. The training is not free. This is serious investment that we put into these guys. And in every other site, this is working wonderfully. I would think that this is poor judgment by one of our staff that we have to address and take active measures against in the future. So no, again, councillors, I wouldn't agree. This is not gun-ho.
So they have no other question at the moment?
I have one, if I may, Chairman.
Okay, just 1 sec. I want to comment on what Mr. Levinson did say, or what Mr. Nixon said in reply to Mr. Levinson's, that, I mean, if I think of the Gettier location in Latimer Road, it's just not so critical as it is in Kenway Road. Obviously, Kenway Road is extremely critical. It's a small road, a very residential area, and Latimer Road on that side, where I think it's an sort of industrial little unit area, it's not that residential. It's one of the very few streets where that side of the road there's not much residential. I think this is an important point to remember, that just because it works okay everywhere else, this is Kenway Road. Special situation, as they all are.
I'd agree, Chair, and you're
anyway,
quite right.
Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Chairman. Just 2 questions, please. Who is the independent training company, and what experience have they had in terms of training your drivers?
And which aspect of the training? Are we talking the Challenge 25? Because that's us at night training.
That, and also the highway code and general ability to drive a motorbike.
Sure. The Challenge 25, as mentioned, is completed by us at night training. Our experience, if I may, is almost around about 2 decades, basically dating back to the Licensing Act 2003, where we've completed compliance training as well as licensing services ever since, and prior with the old licensing laws. The driver, I'm not sure if Anna is still on the call, but Anna, are we allowed to disclose the company who provides this training? I would think that would have commercial impact.
I don't know. From my point of view, I think legal would like to comment.
I very much doubt that there'd be a confidentiality clause in that agreement.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry, I was on mute when I was trying to say that. Yeah, we can't, Chris.
Okay.
No, I appreciate, councillors, you have to appreciate here that we do have competitors to release details of that nature. The exact name would have commercial value, but I can confirm they are dedicated specialists in this area. They are qualified professional trainers. They're not our staff that we've simply put into a different role. They are independent companies. It is recognised training. I have seen it myself, and they are qualified.
Thank you very much. Just the
Thank
second
you.
question is, how many of the delivery staff that you now employ, how many are now employed at the Kenway Road site, and have they all had this training?
I believe current staffing is 6 on the e-mopeds and another 6 on bicycles, which we've just implemented as of last Friday. Yes, they have all completed the training.
Thank you very much.
Those who have not, Mr. Parker, Mr. Levinson, your legacy, are these legacy hands?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get
take them down, perhaps. Fine. Well, thank you very much. I think we move on to the next stage now, but as we've been sitting for just about an hour and a half, I'd like to propose a 5-minute break for everybody, or a 5-minute break to well, stretch your legs and do whatever you have to do. So perhaps make it a bit longer, make it 10 minutes, make it at 5 minutes past 4, 16:05.
Thank you, Chair.
What I will try and do is get it back on my tablet. Anna, are you there by any chance? Or somebody?
Can I be heard on the tablet?
Hi, Councillor Schmetling. We can hear you currently. This is Esme from Governance.
Can I be heard?
We can hear you right now. Are you on your?
No?
Yeah, we can hear you right now.
Re-log in. Can somebody hear me? This is Dory. No?
Hi, this is Esme from Governance.
Esme, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Right, it's 16:05, but I think there's somebody waiting in the lobby. That's right. Do we have everybody back?
Hi, Councillor.
Sherry, do you know, do
yeah.
we have everybody back?
So I think I'm just looking at the attendance. Yes, I think we have
Don't
every.
tell me you can't hear me again.
No, we can hear you.
With Sherry?
Hi, Chair.
No?
Can you hear me? Chair, do you have you muted your computer? Or?
Ah, could someone say something, please? I think I heard some sounds.
Hello, Chairman.
A, B, C, D, E.
Thank you. That was very helpful. The alphabet's always helpful. Right. I'm trying to get back to my tablet, my other gadget, for various reasons. I don't have to wear headphones then. Are we all present? That's right.
They're all turned off. No, they're not.
We're not.
How does she know whether we're here or not?
Philippa, you're not on mute.
No, because I'm.
She had a question.
I put my hand up.
So we're all here. May we continue? Just for the record, I want to tell you that a CBT test, that's Charlie Bravo Tango, is short for compulsory basic training, and to quote the government website, is a course you usually have to take before you ride a moped or motorcycle on the road. Training makes sure you can safely ride on your own while you practice for your full moped or motorcycle test. The CBT is not a test that you pass or fail. And after you've completed it, you can ride, and this is addressing now the point about the size of motorbike, which I think Mr. Nixon addressed. When you've completed it, you can ride a moped if you're 16 or over, a motorcycle up to 125cc, and with a power output of up to 11 kilowatts if you're 17 or over. You must use L plates or L&D plates in Wales. You must pass your full moped or motorcycle test within 2 years, or you have to take either the CBT again or stop riding. And you can be fined up to £1,000 and get up to 6 penalty points for riding. You do not have a valid CBD certificate. And well, there are some exceptions, but I think they won't apply in this case. So this is just to be clear, would be a good thing if drivers pass the motorcycle or moped test. Anyway, I think Philippa, is it Zeebaum or Seabohm? You're on mute.
Yes, it's Seabohm.
Okay, just checking my pronunciation.
Yes, thank you,
It's
Chairman.
your turn to ask a question. Your hand is up.
Thank you. I was going to ask, since the village is a special area regarding the complication of the one-way system, has the management taken any time or trouble to explain to the drivers the one-way system and the incoming roads and the outcoming roads and the pedestrian way into Cromwell Road? From Kenway Road.
Thank you, Philippa. Yes, is a quick answer. Yes, the management has taken all of them through it. The one-way system, and as you say, the proper ways in and out of Kenway Road. I think to preempt the question is that yes, they are all told, yes, they are all trained, yes, they're all aware. However, poor judgment of one driver has resulted in the fact that they didn't follow it. All the drivers are trained in this aspect, as you just described. Turkey, can you confirm that for me, please, mate, that the drivers are well aware how to come in and out of Kenway Road?
They are well aware, Chris, yes.
Thank you, Turkey.
Thank you.
Seabohm, any other questions? No? Okay,
Not for me.
so I think, are there any other objectors who haven't spoken yet who wish to be called? I think actually everybody has been called. Let's see. Yes. Okay, so let's move on to the next thing. Just a minute. So, responsible authority, Mr. Davis, it's your turn. You have up to, I think, 11 minutes actually, given what Mr. Nixon used up.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I'm very grateful in the pertinent and relevant questions asked by the committee, and very grateful in Chris Nixon supporting also the applicant and the residents. Further, also in allowing Mr. Mahaffey to be a police witness. I'll be brief. I'll scoot along, if you don't mind, the pun in relation to my 11 minutes. So I will, with behest, put my position forward. My representations already outlined the concerns around driving. To coin a phrase from a well-respected local councillor, it's a privilege to be able to sell alcohol and to operate on a royal borough. In relation to this application, certain factors have influenced the current position. There was no prior engagement with the police or pre-app consultation with RBKC, as far as I'm aware, which is also referenced in the current policy 5.3. This would have gone a long way in this application. The applicant has already submitted an application to Latimer Road, which I understood also attracted representations and concerns. The applicant has submitted numerous conditions in support of licence objectives, which is of great comfort. However, as outlined, managing couriers and all their facets is key in supporting the primary nuisance objective. Police received a number of complaints in relation to the non-licensable activities from the Getty courier delivery aspect of these premises. And I understand it's, solely between 8 AM and midnight, which has been submitted for the committee, and also which has been later referenced by the residents. Police submitted 2 objections to the 2 late 10s based on this information, which was again supported by the noise and nuisance team, hence a counter notice of serve, which has already been identified. Further to that, again, Councillor Wade forwarded footage of couriers driving against a one-way road. I'm mindful of Mr. Nixon's comments that the staff have been dismissed or there's one rogue driver. But again, it is a concern is that a lot of this is after the effect. I've spoken to Chris Nixon in relation to these reassurances, but in my opinion, of which the implementation have failed owing to the ongoing concerns from the residents and obviously the police. And in my opinion, in additional sales of alcohol are likely to cause more of a nuisance with an increase of frequency, even though identified as 2%. And so I would now, which is an unfortunate position as a result of the additional evidence post my representation, request the committee to consider not, as in not granting the licence in entirety, as the police do not have the confidence in its day-to-day operators. I am mindful of all the good intentions in relation to what Mr. Nixon has put forward and the management of, but it doesn't seem to come to effect especially on the hub of an application of a license, and the concerns have been identified and corroborated gratefully by the local residents. That is my submission. I'd like to bring Mr. Mahaffey, Environmental Health. What are your concerns in relation to this issue?
Thank you, Ian. Mr. Chairman, clearly what happened since the premises operated has given me a lot of concerns, and clearly this is something which has happened subsequent to the premises license coming in and representations ceasing. As you will appreciate, there is a severe disturbance that has been created to neighbouring residents, and we've heard today that at the moment, unlicensed activities or unlicensed sales are taking place on the premises, and as a result, there's nuisance from that. But it's only to midnight. We are now concerned of what would the impact of this be after midnight. Now, clearly what is shown from the operation of the premises is that the operation and management of the premises has not been as good as what we need for the premises. People are allowed to come out into the street, drive dangerously and make noise and disturb residents. Now, clearly that's not what I would consider to be the activities of a responsible company, and clearly it's something which gives me concerns. Now, in view of this, I have to share the view that that PC Davis has brought forward to this committee. Thank you very much.
I will take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mahaffey. And now we have questions from the committee. So, Councillor Wason, do you have any questions for either Mr. Davis or Mr. Mahaffey?
No, I don't have any questions at all. That was very clear.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, or comment and ask the following, particularly to Mr. Davis first. Given that the premises and Earl's Court have only been operating for 2 weeks, if I understood correctly, and the first lot of drivers been fired very recently, do you think that the operator, the applicant, may have learned a lesson? And if we were minded to grant this, and do you think that, just speaking off the top of my head, we made it a 1 year license as a test case, do you think that might allay some of your worries? And indeed, I'm happy the same question, but let's talk to Mr. Davis first.
I think it's about managing people at the time, and I do appreciate the good intentions of Mr. Nixon and the operator. However, a whole list of onerous conditions on the actual day-to-day running could be basically a ship too far in relation to that locality. It is so unique in relation to Earl's Court, the one-way street into Kenway and into Walgrave. I've seen footage from, luckily from the residents, not only doing a left out of the premises, but going virtually the wrong way up. And this is also the cycles as well. And I mean, I've not exactly been down to the location to identify whether there's a specific signage to allow the cycles, as in bicycles, to allow to do that. But there were numerous offences in relation to that, and there is a risk to members of the public. But our hands are guided by your kind selves, Chair, in relation, and we will be directed by the committee's decision.
Thanks. And before turning to Mr. Mahaffey, Ms. Lindsay, Missouri would like to comment.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say if the committee were going to suggest a temporary licence, this will have to be something the applicant will be agreeable to.
Yeah, indeed. We haven't got to that yet, but yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for actually highlighting that point. So, Mr. Mahaffey, depending on what is said, would that allay some of your concerns? In particular, you mentioned the point about after midnight, which we have no experience of as yet. So even though, whatever the team that's no longer with the premises did. We don't know whether they do at night, so clearly there is a worry. So do you think that might allay your fears, assuming A, that we grant, B, that the applicant would consider accepting such a temporary license grant, such a temporary grant?
What I would say, sir, is that the circumstances that arose recently is an indication of the contentious nature of the site. It basically says there's a lot of residents who can be affected, and if the management of the premises is not of a good standard, then we're going to get the complaints. And clearly the issue really is that they've got to get this right if they're going to work in that sort of an environment. And the fact that they haven't got it right does give me concerns for the future. Now, the decision as to whether you go down the route of giving them a temporary license is for you to make. A temporary license is a good thing because it can be reviewed and there's an end date. And that is something which is positive. But the fact is, clearly, they've got to get it right, and clearly they've got to make sure that they manage the premises correctly. And what has happened subsequent to the representation period ending is the fact that these problems have arisen. And they should not have arisen. They should have been aware of the circumstances, and by not being aware of the circumstances gives me concerns.
Thank you very much. I mean, this is something we can take up when we get to the conditions angle. It's the fact that there's a whole new team on board is it may. I mean, it's obviously gives one hope that things will improve. Could I just use this moment to appeal to any objectors or indeed any supporters that if they have any complaints, what if we grant, or even if we don't grant, but places operating, is to submit any complaints you have to the report of problem website. I always say this: we get the evidence; it's very important, and this should be minuted, for the public record. If you've got a problem, let the council know. And I mean, you've been doing it. I mean, we've got some problems in now. It's only been operating for 2 weeks. But if we were to grant, and if there are problems, we'd like to know about it. If there are no problems, so much the better. So thanks very much. Now the applicant can ask the responsible authorities the questions.
Thank you, Councillor. I think just a couple of questions of clarification. Ian very kindly there has mentioned previous conversations we've had, and I'd just like to reiterate how grateful we were to have them. So thank you very much prior, and no doubt in the future. Councillors, I'm slightly concerned that despite the fact I've not consented, we are presented with new information here with an accusation of bicycles going down the wrong way down the one-way street. I've not been presented with anything to that note. And neither have yourselves in the papers. So I'd like that struck if we could. But just to point out and clarify there, the bicycles are a new addition as of the last 48 hours or so. So I wouldn't have thought that they were our delivery vehicles. Can
I just clarify? There's one of the photographs. There's been quite several. I think there was one photograph seeing a cyclist cycling out of Kenway into.
Thank you. Yes. That being their personal vehicles, that one there in front of you?
I think the one before that. No.
So yeah, just to clarify there, Chair, that's new information which I've not consented to, but it is appreciated for information, so we'll have a look at it regardless, obviously. In terms of the claim of an increase in frequency.
Sorry to interrupt there. It does say, sure. It says with a Gettier box on the back.
Yes, Chair, I know it's been mentioned, but I've not had or seen the evidence of it, Chair, just to clarify there. Okay. Not only that is a parked bicycle, not a bicycle going the wrong way or anyway down the street.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd probably have to address this in terms of the law as prescribed, councillors. I mean, when it comes to the licensable activity, I've already outlined in the submission what is up for discussion and your decision, and that is not the fact that deliveries are taking place, but the fact that alcohol is being sold. So Ian, I know and appreciate and respect your good work and the conversations we've had prior, but in some ways I simply cannot agree for the simple question of how does alcohol make more nuisance when there are no members of public on the premises? How does alcohol create more noise in a delivery than anything else? Because that is the decision you're asking the councillors to make here today, is that alcohol will make more noise, and I simply cannot see justification for it.
It's by virtue, from my understanding, of the association with the premises, i.e. if the premises was not vending alcohol, we wouldn't have the nuisance.
I appreciate that, and you know, I would certainly go down the argument of that is an interpretation. By virtue, anything is covered by the license, which of course would be highly inappropriate. So by virtue, it's quite simply not enough. Is there a way, an evidence-based argument that can be put forward, bearing in mind I appreciate that you haven't, that says that alcohol will make the premises more noisy?
As I said, I mean, if, for instance, you've got your sale of your normal wares, your telephone cables and nappies, etc., my interpretation is whereby it would be nigh on impossible to say, you know, whether it's a licensable sale at that time. But my understanding and interpretation is whereby the additional measure of having alcohol would like perpetuate the problem of nuisance. I understand your perspective on it, but as I said, the actual physical sale of alcohol, but it's actually getting the alcohol from point A to point B is the issue, because the physical sale is ideally going to be online via your app, etc., etc., etc. But it's the issue of the actual point of receipt of sale.
Thank you, Ian. I mean, you've addressed the next point quite nicely there, of that it is nigh on impossible to know when alcohol would be included. And I think, councillors, this is the key question. If you cannot tell where alcohol is included in an order, then it cannot be proven, it cannot be evidenced that alcohol makes any change. In fact, it makes no change. And where a licensable activity makes no change, it cannot be seen to undermine a licensing objective.
However, there is a live license in relation to the premises, so one could argue that there isn't a license in effect.
Again, but going by virtue, yes, but I again, Ian, I appreciate your view, but I completely disagree. Anything is of a virtue in that kind of understanding, which is a rather dangerous precedent that a license suddenly is not about licensable activity, where in fact it is. I am reminded here, and Ian, you'll be familiar of this, of the Section 182 guidance, that conditions to non-licensable activities should follow a review proceeding. Well, of course, we're not in a review proceeding, we're in a new application. And again, without evidence to prove alcohol can cause a nuisance, and we appreciate here that no alcohol has ever been sold from the site, so it is literally impossible to provide evidence, then it's not really a fair decision for the councillors to make. Wouldn't you agree that all... Well, let me finish, please.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine. Wouldn't you agree that it's the authorities' determination should be evidence-based? Evidence here must relate to the licensable activity. No licensable activity has taken place at the premises. Therefore, it is impossible to provide an evidence-based determination as to what you're asking for. Again, Section 182, 9.43. This is clear within the legislation. Wouldn't you agree?
No, indetermination is the prevention aspect of the licensing objectives, is the primary concern, and that would be my position in prevention.
Thank you, Ian. Councillors, I'll address the prevention issue after the fact, after we've covered conditions, but no further questions. Thank you, Ian.
Thank you. Chair, you're on mute.
Oh, thank you very much. At least you can see me. Thank you very much. Now, it's the objector's turn to ask questions of the responsible authorities. I'll call them in the order that I've got them on my sheet here. So we'll kick off with Councillor Wade. Do you have any questions?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Parker?
No, Chairman, thank you.
Councillor Spalding?
Just one question, Chairman, for Councillor Davis. Although no alcohol has yet been supplied or sold, we are looking at an operator, a premises or a personal license of a company that's going to uphold the licensing objectives. And that is crime, which could include highways crime, public safety, nuisance to the public, and protection of children. And is that what we're testing here, Constable Davis, that the operator can uphold those objectives?
I mean, there's concerns in relation to the management. In my representations, it's been kind of allayed as in the position with the couriers. Unfortunately, Mr. Nixon and co have had to dismiss, readdress, retrain, etc. And in such a short time frame, in the experience of being a licensing officer for nigh on 10 years and being on the borough for nearly 29 years, it's quite unusual for management teams, in their due diligence, and I much appreciate their due diligence, to undertake such kind of nuclear options of dismissing reams of staff. And the day-to-day operation obviously is weak. I'm not sure how long, how much time the applicant as opposed to the advisor is going to spend on time to ensure all these issues are addressed. If it's a 24/7 into the smaller hours, people get tired, people get loose. I feel that and the residents are going to be sensitized to the whole process. So hence there's just general concerns, full stop, Councillor.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much. I mean, I must say the point of consumption of these items are actually in people's homes on the whole, I would say, not on the street. So anyway, Miss Level, would you like to ask a question or two of either of the gentlemen there?
No further questions from me right now. Thank you.
Ms. Seabohm? No, Ms. Seabohm?
No, thanks. No, thank you.
I think, yes, sorry, the committee. Now it's the turn of the objectors. Again, I can call them in the order I have read them out on the list. 11.
Councillor, I think there's one other.
Sorry.
I was just saying you have. I don't want to make any. I don't want to ask any questions. I just want to make sure me and Francine on your list because they're on the next page.
You're not on my list here because
I think we are, but on the next page.
Not on the list I'm looking at something you haven't seen. Sorry about that.
It's on the screen, Chairman.
No, I know, but I'm looking at a different list.
Oh, okay.
No, I got that. I appreciate you are.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry.
An objector, but I'm looking.
Sorry, I'm not trying to stick my word for nothing. I just want to make sure we're there. That's all.
No. It's fine. It's fine. So if you have any questions, please go ahead.
No, I don't.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what though. As it's now the objector's case, why don't you go first? If you would like to state your case.
If I may, I think we'd kind of discussed and agreed a slightly different order, if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman.
I don't mind. So what order? Whoever would like to go first, go first.
Chair, just to be clear, is there no further questions from myself then?
Apparently not.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you very much.
No further questions to the responsible authorities, as far as I can tell.
Thank you.
And they all said no. So the grilling is over for now. So who would like to go first?
I think, Dory, it's me.
Okay, well, you're first on my list anyway.
Thank you
Maybe that was the
very
right
much. And I didn't have to put my hand up.
11 minutes.
Right. Committee, thank you for letting me speak at this hearing. I would like to divide my submission into two parts. While within the first part, the background, it may seem that some of it, the detail touches on planning, but it's still relevant to place this business within the context of the immediate area of its operation. 2 to 4 Kenway Road is within the Earls Court Village Conservation Area. The entrance to the main building is via an archway serving a small concrete floored courtyard. On either side of the courtyard area, there are residential units above the commercial restaurant premises, as there are with Earls Court and Hogarth Road properties immediately behind and alongside. So these homes are adjacent and not just in close proximity to the area where there'll be bikes, bike movement, startup, congregation of drivers. This is a constrained space and noise travels. The Earls Court Village is unique in the Earls Court area for being single-family homes with narrow streets and pavements. It's a quiet enclave with well-tended front gardens. It's a close community, a neighbourhood community. This application would undermine the value of the conservation area status of the village, and Mr. Parker, a committee member of Earls Court Village RA, will talk to that point. This is a new style of home grocery delivery model that advertises it will deliver groceries within minutes, 24/7, with over 1,500 everyday products. On their website, it says it will deliver from iceberg lettuce to ice cold beer, get what you want or need in minutes. Also, the delivery in minutes, day or night. This operation has been set up with a highly competitive UK food courier market, with competitors like Ouija, Jiffy, and with Deliveroo now making inroads onto the online home delivery market. All this places enormous pressure on the managers and therefore the drivers to perform and to fulfill the deliveries within the promised minutes advertised. Katia state that their warehouse fulfillment depots are in residential areas so that they can be close to their points of delivery. But in Earls Court, we already have multiple stores that are open 24/7 for groceries. And why, as a community and as councillors, we go for a midnight cut-off for all licensed premises so that we can maintain a balance of commercial and residential. The internal layout of the building makes it hard for the manager to see bikes going out of the courtyard if he's at the back of the building. This business has already failed on all 4 of the licensing objectives since it started operating. This business started before it received a license. From the first day it started to operate, complaints were coming in from frustrated residents. It was the noise of the bikes, the sound of bikes late at night, the bikes failing to observe one-way system, the deliveries of supplies to the depot, the fact that some residents have been intimidated by the managers, the littering of the pavement of their discarded cigarettes. Deliveries of supplies are also a concern. I understand that Environmental Health have already been in contact with the managers to ask that the vehicles park in Earls Court Road and then wheel the goods in, which creates noise nuisance within narrow street. Images have been submitted which illustrate unloading to the premises. That's, I think, 6 and 8, I think. This effectively blocks off emergency access to close on 300 homes. There must be a management strategy around delivery and liaison with other businesses within the street with booked delivery slots, but access to the village must be kept clear at all times. These are narrow roads with a 600-metre exit via the one-way system. Residents have the right to enjoy their homes, and in the village, many of the bedrooms face the street. Young children are entitled to have a full night's sleep. Pedestrians have the right to walk and not be concerned about a bike coming the wrong way. And businesses with their table and chairs licenses alongside the entrance, having gone through the lockdown and finally open again, have not only narrowed the street, but the noise of bikes is not great for their business. This new model of business to come to the borough, and when we must ensure that any business understands the neighbour that it was working in and abides by the licensing objectives, and this in case this business has failed to date. In response to the applicant's submission circulated earlier this week, reading through the submission from the applicant acknowledges point 7 that the sites are in close proximity to residential properties. But this is a new business in KNC, and the management have demonstrated a lack of understanding of the nature of conservation areas and working along residential areas with the management of their deliveries and their drivers. The previous application in the north of the borough has a different profile and should not be considered as a precedent. Public nuisance point 11 has been reported as the speed, the sound of brakes, and if electric bikes go the wrong way in a one-way system, pedestrians can be caught unaware. And if there's some other bikes used in the business, then it's harder for people to know what's happening. 13C/D, that the management and the training have not worked with some of the drivers, they go the wrong way. I would take issue with the point 25, which other witnesses will be able to expand on, and evidence to the contrary that have been amply supplied to the committee. Clearly, the messaging and the training is not working. 28C, that the drivers are not judged on how quickly an order is fulfilled if the guarantee and the reputation of the business is that the goods are delivered within minutes. The staffing element and the challenge 25, I think, is going to be covered by Councillor Spalding. And simply, this is the wrong location for this kind of business. They don't understand the area. And I would take question about the management style and the ability of the managers to be able to control their bikes. And also, given the availability of food outlets in the area opening till late, it's reasonable to presume that alcohol would be an element of the late night delivery. And therefore, I would ask that the committee turn this application down or restrict alcohol sales to midnight in line with other outlets in the area, and that only those over 25 can deliver alcohol after 22 hours. Thank you. I would like to hand over to Mr. Parker as a witness.
Yeah, thank you very much. May I just make a comment that if we do not grant this, the business will continue. All that happens is that the alcohol will not be delivered. So,
no, I understand. I understand
okay.
that. I think that what is very clear is we have a new business in this borough. They clearly don't understand the demographics. They don't understand how we live. They don't understand about conservation areas. They don't understand about one-way systems. They don't understand about delivering. I mean, their delivering's a farce. So
I don't think these are part of the licensing act. That's the thing. But anyway, obviously we've taken note of your of your comments, obviously, and it's very important because, well, of your role and knowing the community very well. I know that. So, Mr.
So I some of it may not be considered to be relevant, but I think that the point is placing this business in the context of its location and therefore its impact. Alcohol will be sold. It will be sold after midnight. Actually, what we're saying is, as councillors, and Malcolm, Hamish and myself and other residents' associations have fought very hard to actually have our licensing in Earl's Court come back to midnight. And it's because we want to achieve a balance between commercial and residential. And I'm sure that Mr. Parker would like to speak.
Well, thanks very much, Councillor Wade. No, this is appreciated. And I think I would put this within the sort of good neighbour section of this topic. So could we call the next person, please? That was Mr. Parker.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I've listened to Councillor Wade's analysis and her very helpful comments, and I am in total agreement with what she said. I've lived in Walgrave Road for some 17 years, and I've been a committee member of the Earl's Court Residents Association for some 14 years. The ECVRA's constitution states that we are to protect the amenities and interests of the village and of the residents as a whole living within it. It also goes on to state that we are to work closely with the Borough Council, both at officer and committee level. The village, as it is referred to, comprises inter alia Kenway Road, Walgrave Road, and Redfield Lane. The village has very much the feel of a village and is made up of the 3 narrow streets and a number of terraced and colourful family homes, together with some retail and office premises, and some restaurants and a pub at the top end of the Kenway Road, close to Gateer's premises. There is only one way at the moment to egress the village, and that is to drive along Walgrave Road or Kenway Road out onto Redcliffe Lane and then into Earl's Court Road. As has been said, the village is within a conservation area. The designation was made in 1973. As you will all be aware, conservation areas exist to protect the unique and distinctive area in which they are. Our village is unique by its very makeup and is an oasis within central London. We want to preserve that uniqueness and the peaceful nature of the village. The ECVRA have worked tirelessly to do this, but without resorting to NIMBYism. Living in a conservation area imposes a number of conditions as to what we as residents can do. It must surely follow that businesses like Gateer should be restricted in what they can do too. Otherwise, the whole concept of a conservation area will be negated. Our conservation area village creates a very special area in which to live and gives all the residents living there a unique sense of place-based identity, which encourages community cohesion. We all look out for each other, and this has been particularly evident during the present pandemic. Since Gateer have started their operation, I've received a number of complaints from residents in the village. The ECVRA have raised some of those complaints in the objections that is made on behalf of the residents. On a personal level, I have witnessed bikes riding too fast and failing to dismount as they exit the village by way of the footpath passageway at the end of Kenway Road, which leads onto the pavement on Cromwell Road. I'm sure that it will not be long before Gateer's bike employees tell the motorbike employees of this illegal cut-through. This will further increase the danger to members of the public walking on the pavement. There is a sign telling riders to dismount, but this is ignored. I've also witnessed bicycles and motorbikes going the wrong way up Kenway Road, as has already been seen. A site visit by the committee will show that this is a one-way street into the village from Earl's Court Road. Much more seriously, though, however, my wife and I were nearly run over by a motorbike turning into Walgrave Road from Kenway when we were crossing the road. The turn is effectively a blind corner and very dangerous if taken at speed. Also, if the motorbike does not brake, it cannot be heard, unless in some cases it has its radio blaring out, which I've recently witnessed. Given that time is money for the Gateer operation, speed is of the essence for profit. I note that the business model for Gateer is to secure premises close to residential areas, but I just cannot understand for the life of me why they've chosen the premises that they have, where their drivers, be they on bikes or motorbikes, have to drive through a quiet backwater and a conservation area which has narrow streets and tight corners. It seems to me that Gatir has shown no consideration or respect for the village, the conservation area, or its residents. Finally, I witnessed yesterday morning a delivery van parked in the middle of Kenway Road, thereby blocking the road for about 10 minutes to any other traffic unloading as it unloaded its supplies to Gatir's premises. We have encountered all these issues in the village in the early weeks of this operation by Gatir. In paragraph 7 of their advisor's submission, it is said, and I quote, Gatir understand the sensitivity around this, but they're also experienced operators and know how to operate and manage their operation in a way that achieves a balance between Gatir's rights to conduct a business, residents' rights to peaceful enjoyment of their homes, and that promotes the licensing objectives. Well, as we've seen, this is a very hollow statement. It has not been honoured in practice. Their operation to date does not properly address the concerns that the residents have and fails to address at least two of the licensing requirements, being the prevention of public nuisance and also public safety. They have acknowledged this. However, in Mr. Nixon's submission earlier, he's made many statements as to what has been done to remedy the position, but I'm very sceptical and only time will tell. Perhaps if the committee are minded to grant the license, this should be for a temporary period so that everybody can see whether these remedial steps have been taken and how they work out. Perhaps that should be for, say, 3 months. Sorry, I do apologize. Their operation in pursuit of profit rides roughshod over the residents and the village. I'm very concerned that if the operation grows as Gatir hope, our village, which has preserved as it will, which we have preserved as a unique conservation area, will be totally destroyed. Perhaps a way to mitigate this would be to obligate Gatir's employees to wheel, and I stress the word wheel, their motorbikes/bikes the 20 yards from the premises direct to the Earls Court Road. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. That's an interesting suggestion as part of the training and management training which we can put to the applicant and Mr. Nixon. But I would like to say that a lot of the comments you've made do not relate to the Licensing Act. A lot of it is planning. Conservation area matters are planning matters. And they don't, unfortunately, there is no legal link. I mean, we've tried to tie things up a bit, but the legal framework for a licensing application is totally independent of one for planning. So I'm afraid to say that a lot of what you said is relating to planning. And
Chairman, I understand that, but I was just trying to put a marker down here in the hope that Gatir might take it on board and actually act in a more sensible and helpful way.
I mean, thank you very much. I think you made the points very well, but I think they were made already before in the questions and in other submissions. So it's important that we try to stick to the licensing issues. And again, I stress that if we do not grant this, the business will continue. Maybe not quite to the extent you might otherwise, but you've heard from Mr. Nixon, the percentage of alcohol sold is a small part. So most of, we can refuse the license, but they'll carry on the business anyway. So it's up to them to be a good neighbour. So could I request the remaining speakers to really focus on the licensing objectives and not to spend too much time on planning matters and conservation matters, because we cannot take them into account. And I think Mr. Nixon and the other people connected with the business have got the message. So who's the next speaker? Is that Councillor Spalding?
Andrea Level and I were going to speak. Andrea, shall I go first, then you?
That's perfect. Yes, I'll go after you.
I'll be as quick as I can, Chairman, and stick to the licensing objectives. I mean, Gatir is a new operator in London. They might operate elsewhere. and it's new to the Royal Borough, except in Latimer Road. In Latimer Road, they operate from an industrial estate. But even there, the previous licensing committee restricted their sale and supply of alcohol to midnight, even though it was operating out of industrial premises. Now, here in Kenway Road in the village, I don't think they've been aware of the residential density and the local amenity and the road layout. I mean, I think Mr. Nixon's admitted, you know, alcohol may grow. Who knows? Each base specializes in something. And this particular base may become 100% alcohol. We don't know. And we don't know about the motorbikes either, because it's 100% electric, but they are going to use, you know, third-party petrol motorbikes. That might grow to 100%. Who knows? We have no control over that. In North Kensington, there were 50 objectors, and it's about the same here when you add up all the local RAs. And that midnight terminal hour actually is in keeping with borough policy, and as Councillor Wade says, with shops on the main high street. If this company was going to deliver hot food, I mean, people have thought this out in the past. If they were going to have a late night refreshment license, they would be limited to 11 o'clock unless they had a special license. There's a reason for that 11 o'clock cutoff. When that was introduced, I don't think people had foreseen that people would want their groceries delivered after 11 p.m. at night, or, you know, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, 5 a.m. I think the legislation hasn't kept up with this delivery model. However, Kenway Road, Walgrave Road, Bredfield Lane, as you now have learnt, Chairman, are a very secluded and silent, quiet oasis. It's the earliest and most historic part of the ward. Now, some people have said it's a haven of tranquility. Nobody comes through these streets unless they are residents or a resident having a direct delivery. They're all sort of cul-de-sacs. If you come into the village, you can't go anywhere. You've got to come back out again by virtually the same route. So putting a motorbike courier delivery service here doesn't make sense. They haven't thought it through. And why I say this is because it leads to public nuisance. I said it's comparable to putting a speedway racetrack in a cathedral close. I say that deliberately in those terms to make it vivid. We're asking the licence not be granted at all, but if it is, Chairman, if you are thinking about it, we've got 4 or 5 conditions which residents and Councillor Wade have touched upon, which would make it comparable to what's been granted to this company at Latimer Road. The motorbikes and the riders are employees under their direct control, but you know, we've seen how they flout traffic legislation and don't obey the highway code, and when they do obey the law, they speed too wildly in the narrow streets, they mount the pavements, they speed round blind corners, they go in excess of the 20-mile-an-hour limit in this borough. I mean, the company's never mentioned that they obey the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit. And also, I think the fact they don't have planning permission to use these premises and are subject to planning enforcement, I think this paints a picture of not preventing crime and not preventing disorder, but pushing the boundary of it. Secondly, public safety. You've seen all the photographic evidence and the video evidence, and you've heard the residents. In some points in the village, they have very, very narrow pavements. And in Redfield Lane, there are no pavements at all on one side and very slippery cobbles. And these streets are used by children to play in because historically there hasn't been much traffic. And there are hostels for very vulnerable people nearby. And this is why I think public safety is an issue here. Public nuisance. okay, the speed, the increased frequency of movements. Many of these Mews cottages actually have their bedrooms right next to the roadway, with no pavement between the bedroom window and the road. And so hundreds of bike movements over a period of 24 hours non-stop, I think, is a public nuisance. And finally, I've talked about children and hostels for the vulnerable. The premises did have a planning use specifically for this purpose, office or administration, not to the detriment of residents' amenity. And that clause was put in there specifically, given the highly sensitive nature of this locality, and it's subject to planning enforcement. Now, a warehouse is a different planning use, and a courier delivery service is different. And these premises are supposed to be used for community and social use. Now, if they're operating without planning permission, I mean, that really is a kind of a disorder, which this company, I think, is demonstrating. So I'll just wrap up by saying, I don't think we should support a company like this that flouts and pushes the boundaries like this. If they are granted, Chairman, we would say temporary and not a premises license in perpetuity, but a personal license so they can be tested. And we have 4 or 5 conditions to suggest at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Spaulding. Again, I've got to repeat, planning is separate, and I don't know whether they're actually they need planning permission. They've made we couldn't find any application, but there's some in one of the documents. There's a date in there which I think may be a typo or maybe not, but the change of use has become very simple in certain areas. So you know, in the past there may have been a change of use application requirement, but I'm not sure it's the case here. You know, Mr. Nixon can comment later if he wishes, but please, can the rest of everybody stick to really? I know it's a very important subject and it's close to everyone's heart, and I appreciate it. But can we just stick to the licensing issues? It's really important that you know, and remember the business. I said it about 10 times already. The business will continue regardless of how we decide this. But obviously, we take on board every comment you make. So thank you very much. Who would you like to call next then? Did you say, was it Ms. Level?
Yes, I think.
And the other thing is, yeah, please keep it brief if you can. You've got 11 minutes, but I'd really appreciate if you didn't take it, because
All right.
2 of us have got to go and do something.
Okay. Okay. I'm just here today in my capacity as the co-chair of the Earls Court Society's Planning and Licensing Group. I'm so sorry. Sorry, my mobile phone overrides my computer, and I thought I'd turned it off.
Well, we can hear you. It's all right.
Okay, I'm very sorry about that.
It's okay.
So I'm here today in my capacity as the co-chair of the Planning and Licensing Group of the Earls Court Society, and I've lived in this area for 22 years. I'll keep my comments very brief, as many points have already been covered by my neighbors. But I did want to say that on behalf of the 16 RAs in Earls Court, well, we hope this license will be turned down. If the committee is minded to grant the application, then we would request that the draft conditions proposed by the council's legal advisor and the police that were circulated to this group yesterday would be adopted in order to reduce public nuisance and disturbance caused to residents of the surrounding properties in this very, very tranquil residential conservation area. And these are comparable to the conditions that were attached to the license that was granted to Getir in Latimer Road, although this is a much quieter, more peaceful location than that. In addition to the conditions that were circulated in that document, we would ask that the committee add the condition that was proposed by Mr. Parker about walking the motorbikes the 20 meters to Earls Court Road for exit onto the main road, which would go some way to reducing disturbance to the residents of the village. And again, if the committee is minded to grant this license, regarding a terminal hour. In this particular patch, after 10 p.m., most local businesses have closed. Residents are in, they're quietly enjoying their homes or more likely asleep. And as was said earlier, many bedrooms face the street in these single-family homes. So if late trading were permitted, noise and disturbance from the Getir hub would adversely affect the environment, and this would be wholly unacceptable. So just in conclusion, I would ask the committee to please adopt these conditions and include an essential management plan in the interest of preventing public nuisance and crime and disorder, and also that this be a time-limited license so that this is automatically reviewed when there's more than 2 weeks data. But I think given the data we have from the last 2 weeks, that seems prudent. That's all I had for my remarks. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Level. This business about walking the bikes, I don't think that's a condition one could apply on a license. I mean, we'll ask legal advice, but I think one could have them put it into a management plan, that's all. Mr. Nixon, would you address that point?
I do, Chair. Absolutely not. That would contravene probably a whole host of road traffic laws, I would expect. Walking motorcycles down a highway is certainly not covered by road safety. Absolutely not, Chair. That would be highly inappropriate to add to a license, and I'm not comfortable that complies with road safety laws.
I'm not sure. She probably meant down the pavement, but even that's a question. Okay. Well,
I would agree, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, walking the other wrong way down a road isn't a good idea. I agree. I think it meant along the pavement, but the pavement's quite narrow there anyway.
I did mean along the pavement. I would certainly argue that it is less dangerous to walk a motorbike down the pavement than to ride it the wrong way at speed down the
we'll
street.
come to that later. Yeah, thanks very much. So, okay, thank you very much. Next, who would like to speak next amongst the objectors? Mr. Seaboom?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, go on then. Please try and keep it very brief. Please try not to repeat what the others have already said.
Yes, I do hear you. And one idea I've had regarding the alcohol is that if there is an incident, a complaint during the night, presumably in their warehouse, they know what they are delivering, and they can tell the police if they were delivering alcohol in their box by the bicycle that might have been complained about making a noise.
And what is the point?
The point of that is we would know whether they've been delivering alcohol or not, and whether it's been a nuisance, public nuisance for prevention of crime and disorder, public nuisance, noise, public safety.
But could I ask, I mean, if they've got a bottle of whiskey in there or not, or 3 bottles of gin, what difference does it make if they're making a delivery? Remember, they're delivering to homes in general, not to people dossing on the street. So if someone gets raucous at home, there's not much you can do about it.
I'm saying that Mr. Nixon said that the delivery bikes was a key operation of their operation, and so therefore, from the village's point of view, the public nuisance from the bikes is relevant because we have a quiet area, and the residents won't need delivery of alcohol to themselves at night, so it's going to be for other people.
Yeah, but I have to say, let's say you report a problem at 3:03 a.m.
Yes.
Right, and then because it's maybe not so many deliveries at that time of the day, it can be traced. The content of a box can be traced, and they determine 2 bottles of whiskey in it.
Yes.
And I don't understand if they could have delivered without the whiskey, the Pampers and the coffee jars, to take the example before. What difference does it make?
Well, we'll know that the public nuisance is because they've got, or perhaps we wouldn't, that they've got.
Well, it depends on the incident. If the driver is then drinking the bottles he's supposed to be delivering, that's a different problem. Or he's delivering to someone in the street. But I must admit, I'm sympathetic to the idea, but I can't see how this would help. we can
Yes.
consider that point.
Righto.
Yeah.
The other things I was going to say is that I just have evidence of what I have observed of bikes going in up the wrong way. The committee has already received that, and you have photographs of them. I can just tell you what they are.
Yeah, we've seen them, Ms. Siebel, we've seen them, and we've discussed the subject at length.
Yes, that's okay. I do understand that. I'm just letting you know what I can say, and it might be too time consuming. That's quite all right.
Yeah. No, we're aware of it. You know, it's been discussed at length, including the suggestion of walking the bikes down the other one. Okay. Is there any other point you'd like to make?
No, just to say thank you to Mr. Parker and Linda Wade for their descriptions of the village. Yes, that particular photo was I was walking up Kenway Road towards Earls Court Road. The bicycle came past me with a Gautier box on the back. I was very surprised, so I couldn't get out my phone until I passed the entrance, and that's the fellow standing with his bicycle who had just gone in. That was on yesterday, I believe.
Okay.
I think there's one thing I should say about her.
Thank you. Yes, yesterday you said.
He said.
Okay, is that fine? Could we go on to the next objector?
Yes, okay.
Thank you. Mr. Levinson, did you want to speak as well?
Yes, please. Thank you very much indeed,
Okay.
Councillor.
Remember what I said? Please do not repeat other people's points.
I
And
want
stick
to-
to the licensing objectives.
Thank you. I want to endorse, first of all, everything that the two councillors have said and my fellow objectors have said. They are really important. I've lived here a long time. I know lots of the residents here. I've talked to a lot of them, and they're all really concerned about this get a business and about what it will do. It's a quiet residential area, as you know. There's only one way out. It's past our houses, and it's going to disturb our sleep all night. So we are really worried about this. Even if they're electric or electric, they still make a noise when they're braking or going over cobbles. And my hearing isn't great. I certainly hear them, and I don't see why we should have to put up with bikes going past our house all night. On the point about alcohol, I take what Mr. Nixon has said, but as Malcolm Spalding has said, who knows what alcohol may become, and clearly the availability of alcohol can only increase the volume of deliveries, particularly at night, whatever may have been the experience elsewhere. I think that's really that's critical. It must increase night deliveries. On the question of safety, several residents have told me about they've been narrowly been run over, or that the motorbike couriers seem to want to set their fastest lap time through the village. They've had to jump out of the way. And just to bring to the committee's attention, one of the things that make things worse is the configuration of the village. In Walgrave Road, people park on both sides of the road, so it's not so easy to see bikes. On the corner of Walgrave Road and Redfield Lane, there is no pavement, and the cobbles start. There's no pavement on the northern side of Redfield Lane at the start, and then it diminishes, and then there's a tiny pavement which you can't walk on. So people walk on the road, and this is going to be more dangerous. Also, on the exit from Redfield Lane to Earls Court Road, often the pavement can be blocked by rubbish bags. So again, people may have to go on the road. That makes it more dangerous with bikes going past. And one person said they were pushing the pushchair on the street and bikes going past, and that made it scary. And I want to revert to this point of wheeling the mopeds, because they're not motorbikes, they're mopeds. They are easily wheelable, and I think that, and lots of our residents think that would just almost completely solve the problem. We wouldn't have mopeds going through our going through our quiet residential area all night, waking us up and causing danger. So I think that needs to be taken seriously and not dismissed. And conversely, other residents have talked about the delivery side of it, blocking Kenway Road, and again, could deliveries be made from Earls Court Road by being trailed along? So those are the points. We feel very strongly about it, and I hope you'll take those as seriously as possible, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Levinson. Councillor Wason, do you have any questions? I mean, I put mine in already, I suppose.
No questions from me. Thanks, Chairman.
Thank you. PC Davis, Mr. Mahaffey. Mr. Mahaffey first.
No questions for me, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mahaffey.
None for me, sir.
All right, thank you. Now, Mr. Nixon, this is your chance to ask some questions of the objectors. But again, I've got to request you to keep it brief because some of us have to go.
Yeah, I have no questions, but at the beginning we were promised that we would have answers for any questions that came up. So I have answers, but no questions. If you believe now is appropriate, I'll run through them quickly.
Okay, if it does takes a few minutes, that's fine.
It will take a few minutes, Chair. First and foremost, no, absolutely not. We would not agree to walking the bikes at any point. That raises far too many concerns and could possibly even be illegal. In terms of the limits on the licence of 1 year, 3 months, many times have been given. Chair, councillors, all licences can be reviewed at any point, not going down a review procedure. There is no need to limit a licence. It can be called to account by anybody at any time. The delivery targets for drivers and speed, we don't have targets for drivers. They are not recorded about how long they take or penalised if they take too long. That doesn't exist within Get Here. All our drivers are all over the age of 21, by the way. I wouldn't consent to them being over 25. They only have to be over 18, but just for clarification. Chair, the argument of who doesn't know or what may happen is not an evidence-based argument. I'd refute it. Not having a crystal ball is not a reason to turn down a licence. Other licence decisions, Latimer Road has been constantly referred to. All applications must be judged on their own merit. It is irrelevant what exists elsewhere. And Chair, just to finalise, the key point, I appreciate what you're saying about planning, so I don't have to, but to clarify, we are not applying for a delivery business. That is incidental to the licence that we've applied for. Nothing anybody has presented actually provides a clear evidence link to alcohol. And I think that's just the key point and answers all the questions I've just picked up via those submissions. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Mr. Nixon, for that very brief run through. It's appreciated. The question of the license, I'll just make a comment and perhaps we'll come back to it later in a moment when we get to looking at the conditions. Yes, of course, any license can be reviewed at any time. You're quite right. However, the review process is not straightforward. Well, it's straightforward in principle, but it can take ages and ages. Very frustrating. And the merit of a temporary license, if you like, with a 1 year expiry, for example, I mean, the suggestion was made 3 months. I have to say, I think that's probably too short. But whatever the period one takes, you may shake your head. But the big advantage is that the onus of proof of good behaviour falls to the applicant and not, falls to the applicant. If there are no objections, the reapplication, if you like, will just sail through. The continuation will sail through. But we can discuss that when we get to the conditions. Okay, so I think we've done that bit. So now we go to our legal officer, Mr. Mazurier, to question anything or just to go through the conditions.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions to raise. I think if somebody could put the draft conditions on the screen, that will be helpful. And I will take it as read that all the parties were distributed with these draft conditions yesterday and have read them all. So I won't read through every single condition. I'll just refer to them by numbers and ask if there's any issues to be raised. Right. So obviously there's going to be if granted, there will be the mandatory conditions relating to alcohol. Turning to condition number 1, obviously this section is the conditions offered by the applicant and the bits I've tweaked are shown in red. So presumably condition number 1, does anybody have any objection to that? I don't see that as being controversial. Applicant, are you happy with that condition? Obviously you offered it, so I guess you are happy with it.
I am, Lindsay, thank you.
Thank you. Turning to condition number 2, I've added to this condition. Are you happy with the extra wording in red?
Yeah, we're in agreement, Lindsay. It's fine.
Thank you very much. Turning to condition number 3, this is our model CCTV condition, which obviously is the council's preferred model. Are you happy with that?
It's exactly the same thing. Happy, Lindsay. Agreed.
Can I possibly say something?
Yes, of
Councillor
course.
Wade.
All right, it's Councillor Wade. I think that I would like to see a CCTV plan. You can cover where the CCTV system is in place and whether or not there's a CCTV camera that actually covers the exit point and covers the angle from the exit to Earls Court Road.
I think that's covered in G. The CCTV system shall ensure that all areas of the licensed premises are monitored, including all entry and exit points and the street environment, which enable frontal identification of every person entering in any light condition.
Is there any possibility that we could get clarification that it's got to be to determine that whether people turn left or right is basically, when I read it, I just thought there's only one entry and then exit point to that building.
Councillors, I can confirm, yes, that camera is in place. I've seen the footage myself. It abides with that condition, and that's why I'm happy with it.
All right, and given the layout of the building, if the person is at the back of the building, is there any way a mirror could be installed so that to aid the manager being able to see at the back? Say somebody's in the back of the building. I know it's kind of, if somebody's at the back of the building, to be able to see how people are going out, so they could, rather than retrospectively catching them, actually being able to say something.
Councillor, we do have, if you refer to the plan, we have a camera display TV notified on there. This is how the site managers monitor drivers in and out by using the CCTV. There is a monitor on the interior if you check the plan, labeled D for Delta.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Right. Your suggested conditions 4 and 5 were incorporated into my above CCTV. Number 6, the police have suggested a condition, but I suggest it all gets rolled up in my proposed condition 33. 7 is not really precise enough to be enforceable. Number 8, obviously it was offered by the applicant. I'm happy with that condition, so I take it as read that the applicant's happy.
We can't see 7 or 8. So.
Oh, sorry. Can you see it now?
Thank you.
Thank you. Can we move to 9, the next page, please? Are you happy with condition 9 with my red marks in?
Agreed, Lindsay.
Thank you. 10, just a minor change.
Agreed, Lindsay, yeah, of course.
11, no change. 12, no change. 13, 14, 15, I've kind of rolled up into my 31 to 33. I haven't differentiated between employed and self-employed because obviously you're saying most of them are employed, but also you'd have a contract of employment with the third parties, so you'd have an element of control over them. So I didn't want to differentiate. Is that okay?
Well, I think that reads perfectly fine, Lindsay. It still achieves the same thing. Though the one on screen, I'm not actually seeing your 33. I'm not sure if it's scrolled back up.
We'll come to that in a minute.
That's fine. It reads fine to me, but we'll come to it. Okay.
Right, so 14 and 15, again, I haven't used, and they've been rolled into my later condition, which we'll cover. Condition 16, are you happy with the police's alternative, which is also our preferred model wording?
Yeah, agreed, Lindsay. No problem with that.
Thank you. 17, obviously that's the police and my amendments. Are you happy with that?
Yes, I'm happy with the amendments, so yes, agreed.
Can we add, I think it emerged from all sides, actually. All sides, including the applicant themselves, have recognised a weakness in courier driver training. And I'm not sure how this could be added or tightened up in terms of driver training, qualification, some ambition that they should all have passed a driving test, something written in there to make sure that they are fully qualified drivers and not learners. That's the problem.
I think the applicants said that all the drivers were over 21, did you say?
I believe so. Let me check that.
Yeah, but I mean,
they're not under 18, I suppose, is the better answer to that.
Is that a management plan issue, or is that a condition that one could apply the condition? I'm not sure you can you?
I wouldn't.
This is the external management plan we're talking about.
Yeah.
What's done in the external management plan?
I mean, it would cover driver behaviour and conduct. I'm happy for it to include that. But just to point out, Lindsay, that we would still have to agree this at a later date. So I suppose the condition simply means that, you know, it has to be considered by the Environmental Health Department. So maybe we don't have to quibble here. It has to be agreed later anyway.
Okay, so we can add a bullet point, driver training, to cover behaviour and conduct.
I'd be happy to accept that, yes.
Thank you. Okay, 18 and 19 were incorporated into 17. I don't have an issue with 20 or 21. Sorry, I'm catching up. So, turning to the conditions proposed by the police, we've already dealt with dedicated telephone number in condition 16, and the management plan is 17. Now, this one here, the police have suggested meetings with residents. This is number 22 I'm looking at. If you could get that on the screen, please. Thank you. Are you happy with this condition, and what does everyone think about how many times a year to meet?
We are willing if the residents are. Lindsay, absolutely. In terms of frequency, I'll be steered by their wishes here.
Could I say that I think it would make sense to do 4 times per calendar year, and then if things go well, we could scale back. But in the
because you've got
in the beginning,
previously.
Yes.
I'm speaking, by the way, I can't speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's Andrea Level from the Earls Court
Thank
Society.
you, Andrea. Thank you very much. So
Sorry,
4
Lindsay,
times.
yes, we're in agreement with that.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Could you just go back up to 20, please? I didn't quite see. There's something about electric vehicles and non-motorised vehicles. What was that? Was it 20 or 19? It might have been a bit higher. So I didn't get a chance to actually see it. There's something about electric and non-motorised vehicles in there. Maybe even a bit higher.
Just you have to do it. Just a control F search for it.
It's the management plan. 18.
Well, it's 17.
17. Apologies.
17. Yes.
The third bullet under 17.
Yeah, that's correct.
At all times. Okay, thank you. So that means only electric and non-motorised vehicles.
Yes.
Are you happy? Yep. I think the applicant said they were happy with that.
Could I say something about condition 22, just to add, to make it clearer? I mean, I think Mr. Nixon's agreed to up to 4 times a year.
Yep.
Obviously, he can offer the meetings, and if nobody wants to come, then nobody comes. It's very simple. But what I want to say is, with not less than 2 months between meetings. Otherwise, it's the old story of you can do the whole thing in a week. So not less than 2 months between meetings.
At least 2 months.
We've been in agreement. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, of course.
I mean, I won't say 3 because then that makes you 3 times 4 makes it 12, and you have to. That's too tight a guideline.
So you want 3 months?
2 months in between. No, not 3. That's the whole point. Not 3. That's too tight. You can't. That effectively tells them when to do it, and you can't demand that.
So what you're saying?
At least 2 months between them. Yeah.
Okay, moving on.
No more than 4. Should we say no more than 4? Otherwise, you can do the whole thing. Yeah. No, at least if you say at least 2 months. Yeah, no, that covers everything. It's fine.
Chair, when we keep on referring to Kenway Road exclusively, but Redfield Lane is also one way. I think that we have.
Condition 21. Which condition 20 and 21 are you talking about?
Yes, yes, sorry.
Which one? 21, 22?
20 and 21.
Yes.
Oh.
I think that we have to be mindful of the sensitivity of the road structure in that area. Yes, Kenway Road is one way, so is Redfield Lane one way. And as has been mentioned, is particularly vulnerable accident hotspot at the end of Redfield Lane where it meets Walgrave Road. And so if they speed along there, so it's a question about speed and being mindful of the one-way system, which actually includes that road as well.
Well, so Redfield Lane is one way only east of the junction with Walgrave Road. Up here, according to this map, it's two-way going from Walgrave Road towards Earls Court Road.
That is correct. It is two-way, but I think they need. But I support that they need to be mindful of the safety and also maybe mindful of noise and maintaining street limits. And I think this is also where the hopefully nighttime curfew would come in.
Okay.
So perhaps into condition 20. Drivers to be informed of the one-way system operating in Kenway Road and Redfield Lane in brackets east of the junction with Walgrave Road. You okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll leave 21 as it is because that's the specific problem about turning left outside the premises. Okay, so so the one below 22, I think the police requested a daily incident log, which I'd already incorporated into condition 6 above. The next 4 conditions aren't licensing conditions, so unfortunately we can't add them in, but hopefully they'll be dealt with in the round by other conditions. So moving on to 23, which are my proposed additional conditions. And I think 23 has been touched on in the delivery plan, but are you happy with 23?
Sorry, Lindsay, could I just go back to the unmarked, unnumbered condition just proposed just above 23 about electric scooters? I think that's been clarified. I think you've actually said it in the round. That's been clarified. The use of the word e-scooter was, let's say, very general term, but didn't actually mean those little vehicles that you stand on.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, as you said, it's been dealt with in the round.
Yeah. Condition 23. Can I have your opinions on that, please?
Lindsay, replicated in the external management plan, so I would say replication, remove it. It's already been covered.
Okay.
Except that if another operator, let's say if another operator comes in who ditches the management plan.
I don't think you could share because it's a condition on there that we have to
transfer.
Okay.
Lindsay, can I say under 26?
We're not there yet.
We're not there yet.
Oh, sorry, I thought we got to the bottom of that page.
We're 23 at the moment. We're nearly there. Okay, so your view is that 23 is already in the external plan, and you would rather not it be duplicated, but the councils can take a view on that. 24, are you happy with that?
Yeah, agreed.
25.
Can you add electronically, retained electronically? We don't have hard copies. It's all via our apps. So yes, they are stored, but it's electronic. But yes, they will be available immediately.
Thank you. Right, 26. This is one that Councillor Spalding was referring to. What is your view on that?
It doesn't specify the form of keeping them. It doesn't say paper or electronic. It doesn't matter as long as you got them.
Well, I suppose if it is just going to be electronically, there's no harm putting electronically, is there? So.
Okay. They'll have a backup system, so if the system goes down, they'll still have the record somewhere.
26.
So funny, it can happen. Yeah.
I was just looking at condition 11 that we put on Latimer Road. I think it's pretty comparable. We didn't use the word at all times. We just said delivery drivers shall conduct the delivery. in a manner that will not cause a noise disturbance to the occupiers of any residential properties surrounding the delivery address. Well, this is also, it's not just residential properties surrounding the delivery address. You've got outside the premises. Does this mean the licensed premises?
Yes, it's got the capital P, yes.
Okay. If we don't license the premises in perpetuity that goes with the land, but we issue a temporary license that goes with a DPS or a license holder as a person, can we say outside, do we need to qualify what we mean by the premises?
Well, I think the premises, because it's got the capital P, and I think it's on the front page, on the front page of the summary decision, the rear of 2 to 4 Kenway Road is defined as the premises with the capital P. So I don't think there's a need to do that.
Can we not define that as being in the village rather than just outside the premises? Because this is one of the heart of the things that's important to us.
I think some of that will be covered by the external management plan, and obviously there's a limit to how far a condition can reach. Obviously it needs to be enforceable, and it needs to be appropriate, and it needs to be proportionate. And obviously this is something we can discuss in the after session, but this is the condition that was lifted from Latimer Road. So I would suggest that this Latimer
Road, this is a different thing.
I understand that, but a lot of the issues are the same.
So I'd strongly suggest to the request to the committee that they do, if they're going to use this condition, put it for the village as a whole, please.
I really think, Chairman, the committee in its wisdom could do so much here to allay the fears of the residents on that condition about will not cause disturbance to the occupiers of any properties. You could name those 3 roads, for instance.
Okay.
Yes. Well, first of all, I would suggest, because I was slightly confused by this. I had to think a little while, a few seconds about this. We should say surrounding the occupiers of any residential premises residential properties outside the premises and delivery
surrounding area. How about the surrounding area?
I think the reference to the premises should come first, and then the delivery address. The delivery address is remote from the. You see, the other thing is that the delivery address is remote from the premises. Could be a mile away. So it's. I'm not clear how this is. This needs to be clarified, doesn't it? Or do you mean collection address?
I think given the proximity of the premises to Earls Court Road, actually, I think what you could do is say Earls Court Village.
Yeah, but I'm still not clear what delivery address means here. Is it the address from which stuff is delivery?
It's the recipient.
The recipient, yeah.
The recipient could be a mile away. So then I think we should refer to the premises first anyway, because that's the sequence of events.
Okay, that's not a problem.
Say which outside the premises. Well, outside the premises, it could include Walgrave Road, right, and Redfield Road. But
could we include all 3, please, Mr. Chairman? We have outside. We have the premises, which is where it starts from, the village, which is where it goes through, and then the delivery address, which is where it ends up.
Ms. Le Mesurier, your legal advice.
I'm happy to do that. Mr. Nixon, what's your view?
And I think we're getting tied up in wording here. All of these suggested amendments effectively achieve the exact same thing. So I have no objection to any direct specification of road or area. It still achieves the exact same thing here. So I'm in agreement.
Okay, thank you. The clearer. Actually, in this context, I'm sorry, may I just go back to the consultation with residents aspect? We should define the radius within which residents are consulted. And, I'm not sure that every single door in Earls Court Village should be notified. I don't know. It
says 50 metres. Okay. It says within 50 metres of the premises.
Oh, it
does. Except for the fact that I think in this instance, if the vehicles are going to go the correct way, that this does require a wider consultation.
Certainly.
I would ask that you notify the whole Earls Court Village RA, those 3 streets, also surrounding RAs and the Earls Court Society as a part of the people who are routinely invited to these resident meetings.
So it says directly notify local residents associations, residents within 50 metres of the premises and ward councillors. Is that cover it?
Yes.
Because I'm not sure that Kenway Road and Redfield Lane east of Walgrave Road need to be specifically advised of a meeting.
I think they do, because they'll be affected by the bikes.
I think they do too.
Why are they going down Kenway Road unless somebody orders from there?
Exactly, the mum is delivering out Kenway Road.
Pardon?
Or the eastern end of Redfield Lane.
Okay,
well,
whatever. But I mean, it's got to be defined, and it shouldn't be too onerous and disproportionate. I mean, you could reach them through RAs. You have a single email address for the RA.
There'll be a notice on the door as well. Don't forget, there'll be a notice. So.
Okay.
I think if you notify the Earls Court Village RA, the Earls Court Society, and
do it
others,
for them, yeah.
Then
I think if you put notification on the door, nobody will see it.
No, you've got to notify
But then
a few.
notifying the local residents association, they'll be doing a mail shot, and no doubt that will go further afield as well, I would have thought.
Okay.
Okay.
Could I possibly make comment about the it was about the waste disposal?
Are we on? We're about to do condition 27, which was rubbish. Is that what you're referring
Yes,
to?
so rubbish and
Refuse and deliveries.
Yes, the next two. It's a residential area. Bottles are noisy, and therefore it should be 22 hours.
I was going to ask for the same thing.
And
for the same reason.
And nothing at 9 o'clock in the morning. And the same thing with refuse collections. I presume that this is going to be a commercial waste collection, and therefore that can be negotiated. At this point, I would actually like to insert about the need for the maintenance and the cleaning of the courtyard, so that it's clean, especially so it's actually clean, cleared, baited, and that their cigarette bins supplied, and their responsibility goes out to the pavement.
I think we can possibly add a condition about pavement cleaning outside.
Yes, but the courtyard, I mean, I'm just thinking that you go in and underneath the arch, and then it widens in front of the frontage of this building, and therefore you've got their bin areas. That's where they're going to have their paladins, and I think if we're trying to maintain a cleaner Earls Court, that actually we do need to have that area has to be clean, cleared, and baited.
Okay. Can I have the applicant's view on that?
So this is the area directly. Am I understanding that this is the area directly outside of the courtyard?
It's the courtyard. It's the whole of the courtyard.
Within the courtyard, yeah. So we're not moving onto the public land
area.
outside it.
You are in an area. You've got food in the premises. You'll be disposing of food in your paladins.
If it's within the courtyard, absolutely, yeah, we accept. We'll keep it spotless. Yeah, absolutely.
And you have to clean your courtyard so that, and I'm saying that you clean it out to the road, because actually you've got restaurants alongside you, and we're trying to encourage local businesses to recover from lockdown.
Appreciate you, Councillor. Yeah, you don't have to justify it. I'm in agreement. Yeah, absolutely. A condition about cleaning our courtyard, I agree.
I'd also like to query how you're going to dispose of your bottles and cans. Are they going to be compressed? What is your methodology?
A commercial waste agreement. I don't believe there's any compression on site.
All right.
Can I ask the applicant what their view is on, I believe it's conditions 27 and 28. The objectors asked for no rubbish
2200
between 2200 and 0900. What's your view on that?
Yeah, we can comply with that. That's fine.
Lovely.
Thank you. Ms. Level's got her hand up.
Can I also make comment on 29 about deliveries to the premises?
Sorry, Ms. Level had she's taken it down. Did you want to speak, Ms. Level, or is that just a legacy?
No, sorry, that's a legacy hand.
Don't you like that? Much better than old hand, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, thank you. It was from the 2200 request, which the applicant has kindly accepted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Deliveries to the premises. You've got to come up with a delivery management plan. You've got to liaise with the other businesses in the area so that it's almost like a booking slot as to when the vehicles are going to turn up. You're going to have to work out a method that actually there is at no time is that road blocked.
Can I support Councillor Wade on this, Chairman? With lots of other premises locally, with delivery from HGVs or any vehicle that's likely to block one of these very tiny, narrow, historic roads. What we do locally here is the operators agree that they will park their heavy lorries in the designated loading bays on Earls Court Road. And then instead of taking the goods off onto a trolley and walking 10 yards into the courtyard, they walk 25 yards down from Earls Court Road. And that means that the big HGVs don't cause a traffic obstruction when the police or the wardens will come and ask them to move anyway. So if they would park and trolley the deliveries down to Kenway Road, it's because of the inaccessibility of these premises for heavy lorries.
It's also the problem that they encounter as they go through the one-way system of the corners.
Yeah, you're quite right. It's really in the operator's interest, because quite often a big vehicle will go down to the end and not be able to get out anyway, and we'll have to back up again, which will be very dangerous with all the pavement cafes that we've got.
But that includes your white, your small, the white van that was in the picture, Chris. You could go if you did a site visit and actually looked at it and perhaps engaged with Mr. Mahaffey or somebody from environmental health and worked out a strategy, and then you inform, because you're actually compromising other businesses getting their deliveries. And you're working within a community.
Lindsay, can I make a suggestion here?
Yes. Yeah.
This condition is potentially longer than the license if we're going to word it out as one suggestion. Can I make a suggestion that a suitable delivery system will have to be agreed with environmental health's blessing within the external management plan? My only concern here is that this condition is A, going to be longer than the license, and B, no one's going to know what we should or should not be doing.
I agree, Chris, but this is the point. If you're operating, operating in an area where there are a lot of other deliveries.
Appreciated, Councillor, appreciated. And like I say, that there is now 7 different suggestions of how we do this without actually in practice testing to find the best method. Hence why I'm suggesting make it a part of the external management plan that any and all deliveries to the premises will be subject to a review for best practice and taking the advice of environmental health. I think that's the only way to do this without having a condition that's longer than the license itself. And that way we'll simply find the best way, whatever that might be.
Can we put a timeline on that?
As in when to come up with it? I don't know, Lindsay, do you have a suggestion? Is it worth putting a time on?
I'm just trying to think. So hang on. So this is going back to condition 17, where there is the external.
I'm quite happy to say it's continually reviewed. That way, whenever it is identified or someone raises it out of concern, we simply review it again. Rather than put a timescale on it, make it as is necessary.
Have you got an existing one, or is it due to be reviewed, or will you be doing one?
We have our own internal policies, and external management plan was part of our proposal in the case summary. So yeah, there is one which will have to be amended as per whatever we agree here. I'm suggesting that deliveries to the premises be made as a continual review system added to that plan. That way, whatever the best method is, we can work out together using a review system. Hence why I'm saying bang it in that plan.
All right, do you want to agree a time frame to kind of get the revised plan before?
As in an initial plan? I definitely put in there that it's up for continual review, and I don't think putting a time scale to review it. We should review it as when it's necessary, when people raise concerns. But initial time scale, should we say 2 weeks?
Chris, it's not working at the moment, so we have to get something.
So within
council, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. You know, but as I say, whatever it is, whatever that solution is, has to be clear to all parties, especially us. So that's why I'm asking this. Sorry, Lindsay, you were saying?
So are you agreeing for the initial external management plan, if this licence is granted, to be submitted to environmental health within 2 weeks of grant? Is that what you're agreeing to?
Yes, proposed, and then if we've got to make amendments, then leave it
that will follow on. But just get it to them within 2 weeks. Okay.
Yeah. I only have to make small amendments to have that ready to go. So yes, that's absolutely fine.
Okay, Councillor Wade, are you happy with that?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. And also, keeping on 29, were you happy for the time constraints on deliveries not to take place between 8 p.m. in the evening and 9 a.m. in the morning?
8 p.m. seems a little, but again, is this, Lindsay, is this worth banging this into the external management plan?
Well,
that times will also be up for review.
Well, I think separate conditions for the rubbish and refuse, and we usually do for delivery. So I think it's helpful to separate them out and keep the other bits in the management plan. So it would be helpful if you could agree to some times.
Or could we make the time standardised then, that it's all 2300? That way we all know there's a cut-off.
No, I think deliveries, because if you think of it, people, they've got restaurants along there, and actually I would think that it shouldn't be, we've restricted, I think, Jollibee and the Chinese opposite, which was going to Spear Mews, and that had to be delivered during office hours. And that was because of children. But here you've actually got 3 restaurants that have got table and chairs licenses, and actually having deliveries coming up while people are sitting down and eating. I think that we should. I think it should be between in office hours.
So what are you proposing? Because I had.
Lindsay, I couldn't agree. That wouldn't be workable. In fact, almost contradictory when we're now saying that we have to be restricted to when other businesses are having.
No, I'm talking about supplies.
Yes, and I don't agree. We're now saying that everyone's down the street at the same time. I think that this is something that should be included in the management plan for review, as we have to find the best practice in what could be an evolving timescale, if that makes sense. I don't think it's worth putting a time on here, Lindsay. I think it's a case we have to find best practice. Therefore, it's more appropriate in the management plan that we simply review it regularly to find out what works best. Okay,
but if councillors were minded to consider this condition, what hours would you say? I mean, you've said between 2200 and 900.
They were mindful. Yeah, I would like to keep it standardised to the other ones, because that would make a lot more sense.
Okay, so obviously that's something the councillors will need to take a view on in the post-meet. Okay, moving on. Number 30. Can I have your view on that, please?
Yeah, it's already there. Lindsay agreed.
31.
Rewording of training conditions. 12 months is fine. Records is fine. Agreed.
Challenge 25, number 32.
Obviously agreed.
33.
Agreed.
And what else are we going on to? 34.
Yeah, standard practice, agreed.
35.
This I just wanted to double check, but okay, are we okay with the maximum of 2 smokers at one time, please, buddy?
Yeah, that's possible, yeah.
But agreed.
Thank you. 36.
Have the smoker bin.
So All right. So you'd like smoker bins on the premises?
Yeah, I've got no objection to that.
Receptacle
Okay.
obviously has to be supplied.
Smoker bins. Okay. Okay. So 36, you agree? Sorry, I've got two 36s there. Sorry, I beg your pardon. So let's renumber. So the second 36 is 37.
Yeah, agree.
No
Sorry, 36 number 2. I'm not sure that's relevant, is it? This is not a restaurant or a pub.
I would agree, Chair. However, we don't stock those types of things. The premium specialist beers, yeah, sure, but anything, you know, the super strength stuff that is there, we don't stock them, Chair. So it's kind of a by the by.
Well, if then okay, because I mean it's a slightly unclear because it names beers. Well, lagers are beers too, I suppose, but it names lagers and ciders. And then it says over 6%, but you know you might decide to start selling sherry and bottles of whiskey, so that's over 6%, but it's not a beer or a cider.
I think it's aimed at the homeless drinkers. Usually that condition, isn't it?
Yeah, usually the white
this
cider
condition is of any relevance, frankly. I mean,
If it's not relevant, then I suggest we just leave it in.
I'll leave it to your decision, councillors. If you're mindful to grant, I'm happy with either removal or keeping it.
There are typos in those two conditions, incidentally.
Okay.
Yes, ones? I saw I missed off a D. I'll double.
Premises as well is spelt wrong.
And what's it spelled wrong? Sorry.
37 premise or premises.
Oh right, yes. Beg your pardon. Yeah.
Well, the actual 37. Now we're talking about the 36 number 2.
So. All right, so let's refer back to my original numbering. So
yeah,
the 37 on the sheet, which will now be 38. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, agreed.
Premises, yeah.
The 38 on my sheet, which will now be 39.
Not agreed. Restriction on licensable hours, not agreed.
Sorry, I'm talking about number 38 on my sheet. No noise or vibration associated.
Oh, apologies, Lindsay. Yes, that one's agreed.
Okay. Right. So 39 was obviously, you know, if the councillors weren't minded to grant 24 alcohol sales, but they may be minded to grant, you know, obviously 24 hours opening. I just wanted your views on this condition.
Not agreed, Lindsay. There will be a
Not
restriction
agreed.
of licensable hours, which we're not agreeing to. We don't see valid justification for it, so not agreed.
So you're not agreeing to? Okay, fine.
Sorry, does that mean, say that again? If we were if we were minded to grant limited hours, like, you know, let's, I don't know, up to midnight, say, then this condition, the idea of this condition is to allow bagging up.
Well, this condition just acknowledges the fact that they can still operate 24 hours for obviously non-licensable, and obviously you can still take alcohol orders and you can bag them up, get them ready for dispatch, but obviously you can't dispatch. So that's what this condition deals with.
Yeah, Lindsay, I appreciate it, appropriate to the contract. Yeah, I understand the reasoning behind it, but you know, I still take the view that we're delivering other things, that non-licensable products and activities. Adding alcohol or delivering alcohol makes no difference, that nobody would be able to tell the difference regardless. Therefore, it's not appropriate, so not agreed.
Okay, fine. The councillors can take a view on that. We've already touched on keeping the courtyard clean, clear. I think baited was the last word, and the pavement directly outside. I think you were happy with that.
Do we have rights to dictate what happens on the pavement outside, Lindsay? I mean, we can control our courtyard, but I don't want to be sweeping up other people's rubbish, so to speak.
No, I think we do have a standard condition which just covers anything directly outside the premises. Let's have a look. The one we put on this morning.
Can I just add, Lindsay, it is the accepted convention and etiquette of a responsible operator in this borough that they will keep their section of pavement clean. And most genuine, reliable, responsible operators are perfectly happy with that, and they all do it.
Isn't it called being good neighbours?
It's a standard condition we normally put on. It only relates to the footway directly outside your premises.
If that's all it relates to, then oh yeah, absolutely, Lindsay. Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
I don't think anyone's expecting you to keep the whole of Kenway Road clean.
And the last thing, which
I mean, that would make us a very good neighbour, and we'll consider it in the future. But for this condition, directly outside's fine.
Okay, and the last one, which we've touched on, but I just wanted to just mention the issue of the temporary licence. What's your view on that?
My view is it's not necessary that all licences are subject to review, and therefore, you know, there's no need for a timescale to review the process. However, I take the chair's comments, and again, if the councils are mindful to grant, then so be it. But I would like it considered that it's really not necessary. All licenses can be reviewed.
So just to clarify, you are agreeable when you say so be it?
We are agreeable.
You are agreeable to a temporary licence if the councils view
with
that
a reasonable timescale. 12 months seems reasonable. Lindsay.
Thank you.
Councillor Spalding has got his hand, waving his hands about.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, it's not an electronic hand. There was a suggestion from a couple of us that given that the actual premises use might be in question, wouldn't it be, and it is an experimental time limited license, could it be tied to the company itself or a license holder and not tied to the premises in perpetuity?
No, I'm not aware that you can do that.
No, don't think so.
It's a time limited. It could be a time limited license, and obviously, presumably, a time limited license could be subject to review anyway.
So we can't have like a personal license.
Not like planning permission.
No, we can't link it to any planning situation. Or do what you say, unfortunately, as far as I know. I mean, Lindsay's just confirmed that she's a lawyer. She's a lawyer. Unfortunately, but there we go. But I mean, wouldn't you be satisfied by having, let's say, a year? That gives plenty of time for the operator to get going and to prove himself. I mean, even if there's a hiccup for the first week or two, if the rest of the, the other 50 weeks are running well, no complaints, then, that the operators proved themselves.
No.
There's a hand gone up. Sorry, is that Ms. Level? Who's that? Can't see.
Chair,
Mr. Davis. Sorry, Mr.
Yeah,
Davis wanted to say. Sorry.
Just a quick question. How long has the operator got the lease on the premises?
5 years.
5 years. Okay, thank you. That answers that question. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And then, Chairman, this is the very, very last point, because it's been very laborious for you, and you've been very fair to us. You've given us, everybody, a very fair hearing. There was the question of the terminal hour, where, given the special circumstances here, we would expect a proportionate terminal hour. Latimer Road got midnight. Given these circumstances, I think both 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock have been mentioned.
Chair, haven't we covered this, that we're not in agreement with that and it's for your determination?
Yeah, I think we covered that in number 39. They're open 24/7 anyway. We can't regulate that because obviously they're selling non-licensable items. And obviously condition 39 on the screen was to kind of raise the issue of what was your thoughts on the terminal hour or the terminal hour for alcoholic products. And obviously they're not in agreement. They want it to be 24/7, but obviously it's within the committee's gift to grant a lesser hour.
Councillor Spalding, I mean, if you think about it, if we were minded to grant, and if we did it on a one-year basis, and bearing Mr. Mazurier's comments just now in mind, and in fact it's been said 15 times at least by me and others during this hearing, that there's no need to limit the hours of alcohol, because even if they were, let's say, to increase their sales and whatever, as you said earlier, that you don't know where it's going to go. But let's say the 2% estimated goes to 10% or even 15%. If they prove themselves over 12 months, I don't think it matters that much, does it? Whether we limit the hours to midnight, because it's not a restaurant or a pub. It's it's a store, and I think Waitrose has started doing this 20-minute deliveries. I don't know if they run all night, but I know they're starting to collect goods in my local little Waitrose to do exactly the same thing.
Well, to answer your question, your direct question, Chairman,
yeah.
Given that this company Getir had a terminal hour of midnight in the industrial premises in Latimer Road,
yeah,
and given the extreme sensitivity of this historic conservation area, I just think rationally it has to be proportionate to what has been granted in an industrial estate.
Well,
I don't think that this historic area should be treated worse than an industrial estate.
I agree with you, but if we were minded granted, if we applied the one year license, then the area would get far better treatment than Latimer Road. Because if it turns out there are noise reports from 3:30 in the morning, then we can always change it. That's the beauty of the 1 year license. You can actually grant perhaps more than you might. If you grant it, you might perhaps grant a bit more than you might otherwise, because when the year is up, you can start on a clean sheet, basically, without any real bureaucracy. It's very simple. Whereas if we were limited to midnight and say have a perpetual license, then it's far worse. So that's my thinking anyway. I mean, it might be wrong. And now everybody wants to pile in. Councillor Wade.
No, I'm concerned that actually this is a new business. It's a new model. There are so many other companies coming in and the development, and I think there's going to be enormous pressure. And I think that we have to set standards, and I think midnight in a residential area is appropriate.
Yeah, but
Chair, if I might, from the applicant, I think you're quite clear of our view here. I think it's for your determination, Chair. I don't think we're going to agree with the resident.
Yeah, I understand. Was that Mr. Parker speaking?
No,
Councillor Bateson wants to speak, but he's got his mic off.
Sorry, Chair. You have been extremely generous in giving everyone lots of opportunities to speak. I think we need to wrap this up and come to a decision.
Fine. Yeah, I think you're right.
Move the meeting on.
Yes, I mean, I'm not going to repeat what I said twice already about this matter. You're quite right. So can we wrap it up there? We now know that the applicant would be willing to consider, and he's agreed to consider, to accept, if necessary, a 1 year license. He's not accepting a midnight limit, but we can still consider it. We as a committee can consider it. I don't think there's any other points to be covered. Are there, Mr. Mazurier?
I can't think of any other conditions to raise unless anybody else has. I think we've covered everything more than enough.
Absolutely. So we've reached the end of the meeting. The committee has now all the information needed, and we will retire to make our decision in private session. We will not announce the decision today. Instead, the hearing on this application will be closed and the live broadcast will end shortly. A summary of the decision will be sent to the parties within 5 working days of today's hearing, and the full decision will follow as soon as possible thereafter. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending, and the hearing is now closed.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, councillors.